Hello again, friends. And you are our friends, and we're going to do this again. Welcome to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru right here on this beautiful summer's day. Wherever it is that you are, whatever day you're listening. I don't know what's going on anymore, but we have lots of your questions and comments and more to ask the star of this show. Of course, I am the host, the great Brian Last, and here he is, the star of the show, the man who will prevent me from talking any further, Mr. Jim Cornette.
We're having a heat wave, a tropical heat wave. We're having a heat wave, a tropical heat wave, and Corny can't leave the house. It's not a beautiful summer day. It's an oppressively hot, muggy, uncomfortably humid day, 24-hour period in the middle of a week of what's supposed to get even worse, and no rain and no relief. 98 degrees it's going to be on heat index of 110 on Thursday. And you're talking about a beautiful summer day. The only thing you said that was correct, Brian Last, is that I would now stop you from talking. You almost made me not be able to talk with that fucking meandering introduction to this fine program of which you are indeed the host of. You're supposed to guide us. You're supposed to take us down roads to knowledge and enlightenment. And instead we get alleyways to peep shows of a verbal kind from you.
Is that what we get? Is that what we get? No, nothing's wrong with me.
Get.
I just chugged a gallon of Beam.
Our fine friends at Beam, we'll talk about them a little bit later in the program. If you've been having experiences of your own, of the positive kind, with Beam, text them and tweet them. We want to know that your sleep is even better than it always has been before or ever was before. Nevertheless, it's hot here in Louisville. What's it like up there?
It's fairly hot. It's been pleasantly hot, but now it's starting to get the beginnings of the oppressive heat coming back. From Louisville, I would
From Louisville,
surmise,
we're sending it up to you, yeah. And we have to make a correction. You know, we always, whether it's the experience, the Jim Cornette experience with the quality host that comes out every weekend, or whether it's this program in adjunct to that other program, the Drive-Thru with the suspicious quality host, we always correct ourselves when we've made a misstatement or we've been in error, we retract wrong information. I think this is the appropriate place to do that now before we get started with any more wrong information. We'll apologize for what we've gotten wrong in the past. Everybody says I don't do this. Everybody says, Cornette, you never admit it when you're wrong. There's a reason for that. There's not been any instances of me being wrong, but in this case, you were wrong about something, Brian, and we want to correct that immediately. You said that Daniel Bryan's entrance music was the Flight of the Bumblebee. And it was indeed, instead, Ride of the Valkyries.
No.
The what?
No. You see, WWE has banned any future use of the word Valkyrie because there's one Valkyrie on the roster. The other Valkyrie, who already pre-existed, had to change her name. So it is, in fact, now Ride of the Bumblebee.
Ride of the Bumblebee. Well, you said Flight of the Bumblebee.
I misspoke. I apologize for misspeaking on the previous episode.
You know what? When you said that, when was that? Just this past weekend, right?
That was on the Experience. Yeah.
we were talking about Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. Interesting statistic we'll get to in a minute here, but it's your program. But anyway, I'm just saying we were talking about that, and you said, well, I wonder if Tony Khan will pop for the music rights. He got he'll pay for music. We've seen that with Wild Thing and whatever that garage band is that Pockets comes out to. Will he pop for the music? And we mentioned that CM Punk had Cult of Personality, and you said and Daniel Bryan had Flight of the Bumblebee. And then you went, but it didn't even, I thought for a second, but I was intently listening to the point that you were making, which was a valid and perceptive and insightful comment that you were making. I didn't want to break in when something like that doesn't happen that often with you. So we wanted to try to keep the flow going. And then I lost it after that when we started going. But Flight of the Bumblebee, it would be interesting to see somebody, actually Tony Khan, that would be the perfect music for him. And he could blink his eyes in time with the. It's not the Green Hornet, though. It's dun 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 dun. Right, the big glorious stuff. The formerly ride of the FKA Valkyries in the WWE.
That's right. And by the way, I think Tony Khan will probably, the more I thought about it, because when I was listening back and editing, I was like, did I just say Flight of the Bumblebee?
Yeah.
But I think they'll probably go back to the final countdown for Bryan Danielson.
Oh, I thought you meant it's just the theme of their promotion. It's the final countdown. How many more people you think they can afford over there? Has he spent not only the money that Shad Khan, his dad, was going to leave him, but also is he breaking into his sister's inheritance now to blow it while Shad's still around?
Let's be honest. He's not even close to the limit. If his dad's worth multiple billions of dollars, and let's say he just leaves his son a sixth, that still gives him $1 billion at least, depending on inflation and market value.
$1 billion.
So, no, he has not come close. He's not.
You don't think he's got to $1 billion yet, even if he overpays pockets?
No, I think there's a lot of people. I mean, that's going to be the very interesting thing. I'm very curious how Tony Khan handles beyond the Jake the Snake renegotiations, which led to him getting a 2-year deal, which is amazing. I'm curious how Tony's going to handle the renegotiations.
That he didn't ask for, by the way. Don't bury the lead. That he thought he was signing for a year, and he said, I looked at the paper, and it was for 2 years. Which, number one, that apparently indicates that Jake will sign anything set in front of him without reading it. And number two, that are there negotiations with Tony? Have you heard of anyone being in serious, bloody negotiations over salary with Tony Khan, or does he just ask them what they'd like to make when they come in?
I can't answer that, and I agree. Jake will sign anything. Jake will drink anything, including
now
his own urine, but only for respect. Now, no, I haven't heard too much about...
Now, this one's mine, and that one's urine.
Okay. I haven't heard too much about the direct negotiations in terms of any difficulties or any problems with price. I mean, I can tell you...
I mean, think about this has been... It's not only on the announce team, the world's largest announce team. Mark Henry didn't get what he wanted from Vince, got what he wanted from Tony Khan. Big Show didn't get what he wanted from Vince, got what he wanted from Tony Khan. And also apparently old Malachi Throne, no, he was actually the character actor that, unbeknownst to most people, played the character of Falseface in the Batman TV series. He was always billed as ? But nevertheless, Malachi, what's his last name? Smith? Jones? Black. He didn't get what he wanted from Vince. Everybody's getting what they want from Tony Khan. I wonder if he just asked them coming in, what would you like to make in wrestling?
You know what? I'm going to open an email here. I'm not going to use the person's name.
It's one of those kind of emails.
It's one of those, but I know who this person is. I don't know them personally, but I know who they are, and the email covers a number of different issues.
So what you're saying is you know who they are, but if they have committed any crimes in the nature of bestiality or anything like that they'll later be popped for, you're not vouching for them personally.
I hate to put it in those terms, but yes, correct. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
But this is from a portion of this email, and it says, don't use with my name. I've been friends with Luther for years. Here's what I know about AEW and Jericho.
Unless Luther's really a blabbermouth, you've pretty much narrowed it down right there.
Here's what I know about AEW and Jericho. When Chris signed the deal, he told Luther it was for a set amount of appearances, not matches, and for more money than he had ever made per event. Chris said there were 8 guys that were good workers and the rest were the shits, his exact words. Chris just laughed about Tony all the time. Luther's doing well financially and has moved from Oregon to Atlanta. So whatever that says about the negotiations, to your question.
Well, now let's drop back here for a second in the last part of this email. How did a baked potato with arms and legs from Canada, who was an outlaw mud show darling in Japan 25 years ago, end up in Oregon, where he's been out of the wrestling business, and the business has been better for it for the last 20 years, and suddenly is now moving to Florida. I wonder if he was in the Federal Witness Protection Program. That's why he was in Oregon. That's a good place to hide people. Anyway, I think negotiations with Tony Khan are like the way most people negotiate with their wife. When they say, honey, can I have this? Yeah, because it's easier. And then for both sides. Anyway, speaking of, should we do this right now, right here at the top of the program? Just a little comparison for comparison's sake. A couple of Tony Khan's, well, they're still on his wish list. We don't know until we see the people actually appear that everything's done, dusted, as they say over in the UK. But we talked about the rumors just a few days ago about, is CM Punk coming to AEW? Is Bryan Danielson coming to AEW? And it's interesting. They've just, the videos have been on the YouTube a couple of days now. What, 48 hours, thereabouts?
Less than 48 hours.
Less than 48 hours. And CM Punk is outpacing, at least in our unofficial viewership survey, CM Punk is outpacing Bryan Danielson by what, about 35,000. The video that we discussed CM Punk is at 113,000 views. And the one where we discussed Bryan Danielson, Bry D, whatever, is only at 78,000. And I made mention to you before we went on the air today that that's interesting, but not surprising. And now everybody's going, oh, now he's going to fucking trash Bryan Danielson. No, I'm not. It just speaks to a point that we make a lot of times, that it doesn't matter in the overall scheme of popularity and recognition what the wrestler's technical ability is in the ring versus how many people know who the fuck they are and are familiar and or intrigued or interested by them, and or there is the nostalgia factor of how can I miss you if you won't go away. And both these play into effect here. Bryan Danielson is one of the greatest in-ring technical performers in the business. I don't think Punk would argue with that. I don't think Punk would argue and say, I'm a better technical wrestler than Bryan Danielson. But I think Punk could argue and would argue with some success that he's a bigger wrestling name to people who don't follow wrestling anymore than Daniel Bryan is right now. He's been in, not only was he in a hot period, not only was he pushed to the top, or in some cases clawed and scratched his way. The pipe bomb promo got a ton of interest, blah, 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 but he's crossed over to UFC. Even if it wasn't a great record, he still did it. People saw him in that environment. He's done horror movies, for fuck's sake.
Comic book stuff. He's been gone for, 6 or 7 years now, and they miss him because he went away. Did you see what Brian Solomon tweeted out? I never thought of it in these terms. It was pretty interesting. Punk has been away from wrestling as long as Bob Backlund was away after he left the WWF in 1984.
Wait a minute. Hold on here. I need to do that. We need to discuss that math. When did Bob Backlund come back?
He came back to the WWF. Again, he did some indie shows for Dennis and shit, but yeah, he came back to the WWF in 1992. Late 92.
Okay, was it that early? Okay, because I didn't remember him coming back until I was already there. Well, then that math probably does work. Or it may be, no, hold on. Punk's been gone 7 years. 84 to 92 would be 8, at least. 8.5, maybe.
It's almost the same amount of time.
That's no good, Brian Solomon spreading this fake news.
No.
No, we love Brian Solomon, and we're all going to be talking to him more with something he's working on. I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal that
I think you could say what he's doing, because I think the word is out and a lot of people are starting to anticipate it.
Okay, the first ever attempted even biography of the Sheik. And I've seen the advance manuscript, and I learned more in that one book than I've ever learned that I didn't already know about any other professional wrestling figure. Because the Sheik was the man of mystery, even to people who were around him. And he's done an incredible job of research. So I'll give Brian the fucking mathematical benefit of the doubt but it's comparable. And that was like an eternity. But see, here's the thing. A lot of good and bad shit happened in wrestling between 84 and 92. But at least it was so things happened and changed and etc. very quickly then. Whereas in the last 7 years, things were kind of pretty much the shits, and they've just gotten a bit worse, haven't they? So it hasn't really seemed like that long.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that long. And I guess also just the business doesn't seem like it's radically changed as much in these 7 years as it did between 84 and 92. Bob Backlund came back to a world of gimmicks. CM Punk comes back to a world of guys from the indie scene. I gotta say, too, you know what? With Punk and Bryan going in there, and I'm actually excited to see what's going to happen. And I hope AEW really does something with the two of them, because that really is the best thing they could do. Start with that. Just start with that. It'll be great. But it really does make me disappointed that Samoa Joe re-signed with WWE. Because imagine if you had Samoa Joe and Punk and Bryan Danielson in the mix. I think it'd be great. I think it's an interesting story because it ties back to Ring of Honor in, 2004? That would have been great, but Samoa Joe is with NXT.
Could you put Punk, Bryan, and Joe sort of like on Gilligan's Island in AEW, where they only can interact with each other? They're not allowed. And nobody else is allowed to speak to them. When they walk in the building, in the back door, the rest of the talent roster has to avert their eyes from them. And I would love that. And I would give AEW some rave reviews. But yeah, so far in the unofficial Cult of Cornette YouTube channel scoring, more people were interested in at least what we had to say about, or the concept of, or the prospect of, Punk returning, because he's more of the man of mystery. We talked about the Sheik. Everybody's been wondering. Everybody already knows that, and this is not a bad thing, that Bryan Danielson will wrestle whenever, wherever that he's capable and physically able to, because he loves the act of doing that. Whereas Punk burned out on it. It has not given a lot of indication over the last several years that he was really particularly interested in coming back to begin with, which created more interest for people to see him come back. So, and I'm not saying it wasn't genuine. I'm saying it happens to work out that way, that when somebody that people want to see do something gets tired of it and doesn't really want to fucking do it anymore, it creates turmoil amongst all those people that either want to see him do it, or in my case, don't want to see me. Can you imagine if I started milking every week? Yeah, I think I'm coming back to a certain promotion. My God, they'd have petitions out to every promotion in the world. No, you can't do that to us. Don't take it.
Do you think Punk has any issues with that audience? Because it's very different. Let me say I recognize that right away. But the Ultimate Warrior was away a couple of years or a few years, and he came back in 96. That first time out, monster pop. He was, in a lot of people's eyes, the big draw of that WrestleMania. And then the more you saw him, the more you realize he's changed and the wrestling's changed. Both went in different directions, and they're never going to meet in the middle again. Punk hasn't been there in a long time. There are a lot of things that are the same. We don't know what he's going to be in the ring. We don't know what he could do physically. I mean, I'm not saying he's messed up or anything, but he hasn't been in a ring in a long time that we know of, or at least hasn't worked a match publicly. Does he have anything to worry about with a very fickle fan base if he's not working at a level they anticipate?
Well, for one thing, he wrestled for 15 years, right? And then he's taken 7 years off. So he's actually, you can stay in shape, and obviously he has the means and the access to get in a ring if he wants to, if he feels he needs to not in front of people, but to work out the ring shape, the ring cardio. It's not like he's I wouldn't think he's a person that's probably gotten that overweight. But the point is, the Warrior was different because the Warrior was purely a gimmick on the surface of things. And people's taste in gimmicks had changed. He hadn't watched any wrestling, and he couldn't do the shit that he couldn't do the wrestling that they were doing when he was on top, Warrior. So he certainly couldn't do the kind of wrestling they were doing when he came back. It was a gimmick. Punk can work, but more importantly, Punk can talk. And whereas Daniel Bryan's going to be a massive fucking babyface to this crowd, and he's going to go in there and he's going to want to have every style of match from soup to nuts with everybody he's never gotten in the ring with, and he'll enjoy it. And I'm sure he'll be the one to embrace the comedy wholeheartedly or the modern style or whatever, because he's just, it's not that he's happy to be there because he needs a job. He's happy to be there because that's what he likes doing. With Punk, I believe that he's one that could probably stir that audience up to fucking violence. They might fucking bring the fucking house down for him when he first arrives, obviously, just like they did for Cena, because they missed him because he went away. But Punk can talk well enough, and Punk could pull the fucking, I've been the biggest star in the biggest company. I told the son-in-law he was the one that needed to work with me instead of me working with him. But does that make me a hero to you people? It probably does, and it should, because I'm better than all of you. I'm better than everybody in this company. I came back because Tony Khan groveled on his hands and knees and literally told me that he would pay me more money than I've never ever known that the federal government printed before. So I can come here and lower myself to deal with you fucking people, to deal with you fans, to deal with these jack-legged outlaw mud show goofs in the locker room. I know I'm doing my promo now, but you get the fucking drift in Punk's delivery. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this for about a year. And then I'm going to go back home and to my successful wife who writes comic books and screenplays. And I'm going to fucking never be seen again in public by you wretched refuse of humanity. Because that's the way I like it. Ha ha ha. If he did that, he'd have fucking people waiting for him in the parking lot, because Punk can say things, whether he means them or not, in the course of a promo that you believe he means them. And he might even have some fucking material to work with there, with the Cucamonga kids and anybody else that he might not be particularly fond of as people. He could cut them up like fucking gutted fish, verbally. So you could really do either with him. He could be a heel, or naturally he's going to be a natural babyface because he's a star coming in, and AEW got the guy that Vince couldn't get to come back. So they're going to want to like him, but he might not want to be liked. He might see an opportunity to go in here and create more stir than anybody else is by actually making them genuinely dislike him, and not just in the haha, we're playing along with the show because we're smart way that they boo the other heels. But like, fuck you, motherfucker. You aren't too good for us, because you know they're sensitive. There's some sensitive people over there on both sides of the barricade in AEW. What do you think, Brian?
I don't think they want real heat, and I don't know how much real heat you get from that crowd. A guy jumped the rail not because there was any heat, but because he was a nutbag. And, we'll talk a little bit later about what some people are calling an instance of heat and what other people are calling smart fans just being disrespectful or being embarrassing. I mean, I've seen various things across the board, but I don't think heat is something they're looking for nowadays.
I wonder if Punk doesn't give looking for it.
Maybe.
Here's the thing: did Punk said he didn't want to come back to the WWE and be another guy doing shitty television. How are they going to tell CM Punk what to do? By the very fact that more people are interested in seeing him come back, or knowing where he's going to come back, or when he's going to come back, or what he's going to do, than almost anybody else. I would say, okay, you brilliant wrestling performer, I got another artist on the roster. If you're such a brilliant wrestling performer, what do you want to do? How do you want to be different? How do you want to get people to talk about you and my program? You never know. Is it we talked? Does Tony Khan negotiate on money? Is he going to tell CM Punk or Daniel Bryan, either one, how the fuck they should be presented and whether they should be a babyface or a heel and what they should do? Would he present? I mean, I know he's been Booker of the Year, and I know he's been writing his own television program for 2 whole years now. And we've talked about the successful cohesiveness of that plan, but is he now going to be telling these guys what to do? What if he got Steve Austin to come in? Hey, Steve, fuck the shit you were doing with the beer drinking and the fucking stunner and everything. I got another gimmick I think would be perfect for you. How far would that go? I think Punk could tear that fucking television program up. Or he can be another guy doing bad television.
I mean, we shall see. It'll be interesting. Do you align Punk with Bryan if they're both coming in around the same period of time, or do you keep them completely separate?
Fuck no. Why would Jesus Christ? That would be the exact opposite of Dusty's put everybody in Paul Jones's army against Jimmy Valiant so we keep the fucking entertainment match all in one place to a minimum. No, then if you've got those two mega stars, don't tell the people what their relationship is with each other. Bring them in from the opposite sides of the building and let them interact with everybody else before they meet in the middle. Because then you won't know what their relationship is or what might happen or whatever.
See, the problem is with Tony as a booker, I've said it before, he's a good matchmaker. It's easy not to dismiss the job of a matchmaker, but right now it's easy to pencil in several matches that would work. Bryan versus Omega, Punk versus Omega, Punk versus Cody, Bryan versus Cody. I mean, there are several guys there. You elevate one or two of the younger guys. There are several matches there. The issue is going to be the week-to-week booking, getting from one thing to another. The match will draw. People will be interested. People will want to see it. The booking week-to-week will probably do nothing to persuade or dissuade anyone from buying it. But it's not going to be good. That's what I'm afraid of. We'll get really good Bryan Danielson matches, and there'll be some really bad backstage segments like we've seen with fucking Christian. Christian's kind of a litmus test for everything we're about to see. Unless these guys, and Punk said before he doesn't really want to book. Didn't he say in an interview he kind of just wants someone to tell him what, he wants to do something that someone tells him to do that he would actually want to do. Isn't that kind of what he said?
Oh, God, now that you put me on the spot, there was some quote in that he was like, well, why should I have to come up with this shit? Isn't that their job? But I mean, could he look at it like a well-paying hobby? If he puts the thought into just what he's doing, then he'll make a bunch. I don't know. If he's going to put his life, career, fortunes, etc., in the hands of somebody else, then I wouldn't think that he would go to this company to do that. I would only think he would want to be hands-on.
If you were going to wait to give Punk a premium match, if you were going to fuck up Punk like you did whatever you were trying to do with Christian, and Punk's smart. I don't think Punk's going to.
By the way, he ain't out working everybody these days. He's just out talking to everybody, Christian. He never wrestles anymore. He just talks for other people.
If they'll do business with each other, would you do something with Punk and Cabana?
No.
Because people know there's a history and they had a big falling out. And
people know. You know what? That reminds me of a Bill Watts memo that I still have a copy of here that I got in 1984. He started out by saying, "Gentlemen, I know that you are all superstars and that, quote, all the people know, unquote, about the stipulations, backstories, etc. But," and then the point of the memo was remind people on your interviews and your promos. Don't fucking just dangle that shit. Remind them over and over. With all the people that know are all the people that are already watching, or they certainly already know about the program and they've made a conscious decision not to watch it. Colt Cabana, and this is not even disrespectful to him, this is just stating a fact, has been presented as a guy running around in a group of goofs for months and months and months. Has he wrestled on the television program in the last year, maybe longer? I know he's been on YouTube, I'm sure, because they're sending him a check, so he's got to do something. But you know what? No, they have not even presented any wrestler, whether Colt Cabana or anyone else, that's been presented the way that Colt has been presented in that group and over the last. No, he wouldn't. He would be walking up to CM Punk to get his autograph, if anything. That'd be just ridiculous. And I don't even see what. And then also, you to fucking talk Punk into coming to work for you. Then, by the way, a former friend of yours that you guys have had a falling out and who knows who stabbed who and did what, work with him. Fuck you. What? No, I'm sure that's another example of, I'm sure that might be a thing that Tony Khan would have thought of, because that's what a fan would think of. And not even, I won't say a fan, a mark would think of. It's mark booking. But no, okay, we did the test on the YouTube views, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan. What if we did one that says, is Colt Cabana thinking of leaving AEW? I mean, I know anything with my name on it will get listens, but do you think that would do 10,000 views?
Probably, at least. Probably, well, significantly more than that. That would be the very, very minimum if I dropped it in the middle of the night on a holiday or something.
All right, I know, but still, but that just because it's on our channel and we have so many 100,000 subscribers. Anyway.
But, you know, a lot of people have been saying, you know, with Punk returning, they haven't seen him in the ring in a long time. The last time we saw him do anything physical was the UFC, different training. He was obviously at a lower weight for that. But a lot of people were saying that with him coming back, he's got to really take his training seriously. And, of course, that starts with a good breakfast.
A good, healthy breakfast. And, folks, if you're a person who needs a good, healthy breakfast in your life, then I refer you to our fine friends at Magic Spoon. And, of course, the tweets have been coming, people tweeting the boxes of Magic Spoon, the custom bundles. We love that. The sponsor loves that also. Keep retweeting those and testifying and giving testimonials to how great this stuff is, because it is the world's healthiest and most delicious cereal. No carbs, no sugar, no junk. You can feed this to kids and not even be picked up by the authorities. Folks, 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, 140 calories a serving, keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. Whether the cocoa, the fruity, the frosted, the peanut butter, the blueberry, or the cinnamon, or all of them, just go to magicspoon.com/Jim. You can buy what you want, or you can just pick out a bundle. You can do whatever. Get all those flavors. And use the promo code JIM, J-I-M, at checkout and take $5 off your order. Magic Spoon's so confident, it's backed with the 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like it for any fictitious reason, there can't be a real reason not to like this fine cereal, but they will refund your money, no questions asked. Me, I'd interrogate you extensively. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/Jim. Use the code JIM to save $5 off at checkout. Boy, I love the fruity. I love the frosted, the peanut butter. But boy, that cocoa, that stuff, I love the cocoa. Tastes so good.
Well, Jim, speaking of things that taste good, or maybe in this case taste bad, we've received a lot of questions about something that happened over the weekend that some people have been talking about. Did you see that Nick Gage, who will be on AEW this week, had a match with, I believe it's Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder from WWE?
Boy, he had a guest spot in AEW. Who's he friends with now? He's best friends with Cody. Okay. And I guess they said, thank you for coming, and boom, he's off to the Mud Show, I guess, because we've never seen him again. And no, I didn't see the match, obviously. I didn't know the match was going to take place beforehand because I don't monitor MudShowCentral.com. And once that I saw on Twitter that people were talking about the match, I made no effort to seek it out because why the fuck would I? But what I did see was a couple of pictures that people had tweeted of they're fucking, now they've got this Matt Cardona how long's he been out of the WWF, WWE? Year, maybe? And he's already rolling around in razor blades and light tubes with the bank addicted drug robber. Is this how far the mighty have fallen? And he was sliced up and covered in blood from asshole to appetite. And why is now this is it a real life situation that they do on WWE television where he lost his job and now he can't pay his rent unless he goes out and bathes in hepatitis germs with some drug addict? What's going on with him?
I'm not sure. With Cody, there was an indie credibility tour. I don't know if that's what this is or if this is just something he's interested in that he wanted to always try.
Wait a minute, indie credibility tour, and he starts with wading through broken glass with a trailer park meth cooker.
Would you be interested in seeing a clip of this?
No, I would not.
Would you be interested in seeing anything from the aftermath?
No, I would not.
Did you see anything from the aftermath? Do you know anything about what happened?
I heard they threw a bunch of garbage in the ring.
That's right. They threw it reacting to Cardona winning the title.
That makes sense. In Mexico, for a good match, they throw money in the ring. So what did they throw garbage in the ring for? A garbage match. They were showing their respect by throwing the equivalent of Matt Cardona and the bank addicted drug robbers match into the ring on top of them. And I'm not going to watch that. I'm not going to dignify these people by watching that and giving them any more publicity, because they're obviously, and I guess he desperately wants somebody to be talking about him, because why would you do that? Why would you, if he's a supposed ex-WWE star, a pro, why do you dignify these people on both sides of the barricade? The people, I use the quotes around people in the ring and the people in the crowd at these garbage shows. Why would you do that? He's blown his credibility. Did Cody do death matches with convicted felons in barns for questionable promoters?
Cody did the dick spot in the Cow Palace.
Oh, good Lord. Well, at least there was nobody there to see it.
Well, I guess we'll move on from this topic, Jim. Our next one.
Speaking of nobody there to see it, real quick, there's nothing to see yet, but I want to make mention of, I've spoken again to Hotchkiss Featherbottom, and we are looking good for a debut of the all-new JimCornette.com and the all-new Cornette's Collectibles web store Labor Day weekend. Exact day and time to be coming over the next few weeks, but Labor Day weekend, shock and awe, a brand new website store. But I'm getting a lot of emails saying, hey, motherfucker, would you start selling shit again? And that makes me feel good, because who else gets that? Hey, I'm being cussed out because I will not take people's money. That's a special position to be in. So I'm going to try to rectify this as soon as possible. It will be rectified. I just wanted to mention that. But this is your show.
That's right. I believe it is. And we have a popular topic just today as we are recording. The WWE has issued a tweet from the WWE PR Twitter account, public relations, of course. WWE and Blumhouse, it could be Blumhouse, but I believe it would be Blumhouse, are partnering to develop a limited scripted series called The United States of America versus Vince McMahon.
Oh, shit. I thought, wait a minute. I thought it was just a movie. It's a series?
The series will be the first ever scripted dramatic portrayal of a chapter in WWE's history. And then there's an article here from The Hollywood Reporter. WWE Chairman Vince McMahon, who has frequently played the heel on, that's in The Hollywood Reporter, that's crazy, who has frequently played the heel on the company's wrestling shows, will get to be the good guy in a scripted series. Blumhouse Television is partnering with WWE to develop a limited series based on McMahon's 1990s trial for allegedly supplying steroids to members of the WWE roster. The United States of America versus Vince McMahon will be the first scripted portrayal of a part of the company's history and the stars of that era. A quote from Blumhouse TV president: "We have a dramatic, riveting saga, one that's crazier than fiction. that will appeal to the cross-section of Blumhouse and WWE fans. To say I'm thrilled
Wait
about
a minute.
collaborating.
Is there a cross-section of Blumhouse and WWE fans? What is Blumhouse?
I'm clicking on their thing right now. We make
You're clicking on their thing. Is
on
it
their
that
Twitter.
kind of site?
On their Twitter page, their description says, "We make nightmares come true." I guess that's true.
Yeah, well, there you go.
A Vince McMahon babyface series.
Vince McMahon.
Well, let's go back to this article here.
Vince McMahon has been instigating nightmares for 40 years.
The potential series, which doesn't have a writer attached yet, will focus on the 1990s, when a series of New York Post stories alleged McMahon was supplying steroids to his wrestlers. The coverage caught the attention of the FBI and federal prosecutors in New York, who indicted McMahon on charges of possession of illegal steroids with intent to distribute and conspiracy to distribute steroids. Per the show's logline, quote, "With his liberty at stake, 2 school-age children at home." Wait a minute.
What?
2 school-age children at home, and with the WWE on the brink of bankruptcy.
What? Wait. They were on the brink of bankruptcy. The only year they ever lost money was 3 years in the future.
Who was school age in 1994? What was Stephanie, a senior in high school?
No, I was 92, wasn't it?
94 was the trial.
Well, that's true. Okay, 94, Shane would have been, my God,
Out of
in
school?
college.
Yeah.
And, well, all right.
Well, back to the school age.
Yeah, back to the school-age children.
McMahon refused to take a plea deal. Ultimately, McMahon stood trial and was acquitted unanimously by a jury of his peers and went on to build a multi-billion-dollar global sports entertainment empire. Here's a clarification. McMahon's son Shane was in college and occasionally working behind the scenes for WWE during the show's timeline. Daughter Stephanie was in high school. That is not school-age children. I'm sorry.
Well, but hold on. You're burying the lead again in this. They're saying, I know that the Mushnick and several people in the New York media were raking Vince over the coals, but the reason why he ended up on the government's radar was because of Zahorian. Was
Correct.
It not?
It wasn't Mushnick, it was Zahorian.
Yes. And then the reporting by Mushnick and others was on the Zahorian connection, and it then leading to, and let's face it, for the government of the United States of America to have prosecuted or brought charges against Vince for that when basically it was a billionaire boys club version of everything that guys that work out together at gyms did at that point in time in every city in America. They're all fucking taking steroids and fucking lifting weights. It wasn't like Vince was the operator of the cartel smuggling all these things in massive quantities from Colombia, that the United States government really needed to go that far. But having said that, my God, having Vince and his company co-produce a docuseries on his trial for shit he was accused of. Why didn't we get fucking Charlie and Squeaky to fucking help out on Helter Skelter? Is there any chance of getting any kind of impartial telling of this story in either direction when the guy that was on trial is the executive producer of the fucking show? I wonder what OJ would have done had he been the executive producer of O.J. Simpson versus America. Would the story have been different?
Well, Vince isn't the only executive producer. McMahon will be an executive producer of the project, along with WWE's chief of global television distribution, Kevin Dunn.
Okay, Kevin will keep him straight.
As well as several people from either Blumhouse or Blumhouse. Jason Blum, it says here, but you could pronounce it Blum.
From Blumhouse.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Jewish name, so I've seen it a lot in my life, but you could pronounce it 2 different ways, so you never know how someone pronounces it.
Well, the Blum is off of the rose on this one already, I think.
And I've never heard of this production company. The collaboration with the WWE is the latest foray into scripted TV for Blumhouse or Blumhouse, whose previous productions include HBO's Sharp Objects, Showtime's The Loudest Voice, and The Good Lord Bird, and NBC's upcoming The Thing About Pam, starring Renee Zellweger. They've also landed the rights to Patricia Cornwell's novel. They're developing something with Jamie Lee Curtis.
And then after that, what was that one TV series?
The Thing About Pam.
No, back at
starring Tim Horner and Pam. The Good Lord Bird.
Oh, and keep going. What was the other one?
The Loudest Voice.
What was the other one?
Sharp Objects.
Sharp Objects. That's what it was. And it'll be followed by a sequel. Loud Noises. And then Smelly Farts. We'll round out the primetime lineup on Saturdays.
Do you think they're going to have like a fake Offa in the series sitting there mouthing the words "not guilty" to the jury box? Like it actually happened in the fucking trial. I think it was Offa. It could have been Sika, but it was one of the two Wild Samoans sat there and started mouthing the words "not guilty" to the fucking jury. It had to be brought out of the courtroom. I'm so jealous. Georgia Makropoulos was there every day. She was in the courtroom.
Went to cover it, right? Yeah,
she was in there every day, and just what a shit show it sounded like for the prosecution, just relying on these wrestling people like nails to prove that Vince McMahon had done anything.
They couldn't tell the truth straight. And see, he wasn't mouthing "not guilty." He was a book that week, so he was working on his second job. He was trying to do ventriloquism. He was throwing his voice. But I can't wait to see this fine docu-series about this
not a
momentous event in American history.
A scripted series.
Or scripted series or whatever. I'm sure it'll be heavily scripted. They can't do wrestling without scripting it. I wonder, since a movie script is supposed to be complete with stage direction and, everything just minutely written down to a T, I wonder, since they're used to doing that for wrestling, if they're going to have to tell the people in the TV series when they can take a shit and when they're supposed to drink a cup of coffee and whatever, off camera as well. We'll keep you updated on those things as they continue to happen, won't we?
Well, Jim, they say that after Vince McMahon defeated the federal government, defeated Sean O'Shea, he went back and he got on his couch and he thought about getting revenge against Phil Mushnick, but he was on his couch. That's the important part.
That's the important part. The important part is the couch. And folks, I'll tell you what, have you ever had a sofa that sucked? Or a couch that was caca? It got all lumpy, or the ass fell in, or you couldn't get comfortable on it no matter how you tried. It was time to get a new one. Well, I'll tell you now, folks, where you need to be getting your couches and chairs and sofas and things and such of that nature from. We've talked about the fine folks at Helix and how they make these mattresses that we're obsessed with, that it's as comfortable as sleeping in conjunction to the neighborhood of a puppy's belly. Well, now Helix has left the bedroom and started making sofas. They've just launched a new company called Allform, and they're making the best sofas in the game. For starters, you can customize your sofa using premium materials at a fraction of the cost of traditional stores. You can pick your fabric, spill, stain, and crotch resistant, or crotch resistant, or even scratch resistant. It's resistant to all those things. You can pick the color of the legs, the sofa size, the shape. They've got armchairs and love seats all the way up to an 8-seat sectional. So there's something for everybody. And because these bad boys hook together and fit together in a variety of ways, you can start small. And if you move into a mansion like Last Manor, then you can buy more and add on to your sofa to grow and change with the times. And these are delivered directly to your home, fast, free shipping. If you order from couches.net or whatever, it might take months to get there. We did that one time. They sent the wrong color after 2 months. You'd need to have somebody to cart the thing in, blah, blah, blah. Allform takes a couple of weeks to arrive in the mail, and you assemble it yourself in just a couple of minutes. You don't even need tools. I had the Monroe brothers do it because I'm lazy and won't do anything, but it's easy. Anyway, If getting a sofa without trying it in the store sounds a little risky, you don't need to worry because you get 100 days to decide if you want to keep it. That's almost 3 months, right? 100 days.
More than 3 months.
Well, even better. And if you don't love it, they'll pick it up for free and give you a full refund. Allform also offers financing, flexible payment plans, or you can play and then pay. If you like flexible payment, you need to be on one of these sofas. Anyway, they offer a forever warranty, actually like forever, until the end of time, the crack of doom. To find your perfect sofa, check out Allform, ALLFORM, allform.com/JCE, and you get 20% off all orders for our listeners. Allform.com/JCE. You could literally make one of these couches like the Winchester Mystery House. Just keep adding on and never stop. And they're amazing. It's incredible.
That's exactly right. And Jim, of course, we have incredible listeners here on the show, and I understand you have a shout out for one of them.
Yes, I do. Real quick, we got an email, and I'm not going to read it because it's, so personal. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but from Tom in Scotland, his sister Laura passed away just recently. She had cancer. She was only 32 years old and had 2 young children, and was actually just diagnosed just recently and was going to start chemotherapy, but passed away very quickly afterwards and wasn't able to. So anyway, he wrote and asked if we could give him a shout out because he's been listening during all of this stuff, trying to get away from it. And Laura's funeral is this week, and we wanted to send our sympathies to Tom in Scotland is all I'm going to narrow it down. But, we hated to hear that, but again, without reading all the nice things he said about us, at least he was able to listen to the show and get away from stress for a while. But anyway, speaking of stressful, you're the host of this program.
That's right, and you stress the listeners out, so I think it's a fair trade, and we have, of course, questions from the listeners here, Jim, and one that, surprisingly, has been a popular topic sent to us via email and on Twitter multiple times since Friday on SmackDown. Did you see the latest, I guess now he's just Baron Corbin again, right? He's not King Corbin. The latest Baron Corbin promo. Of course, we reviewed a script from SmackDown last week where he was talking about how within a week of losing his crown he was about to have his house foreclosed, that his mortgage was late, and everything has gone wrong in that week.
Well, you asked me if I've seen the latest Baron Corbin promo, and the answer to that would be the same if you'd asked me, have you ever seen a Baron Corbin promo? No, I have not, because... And now he's not even the Possum King anymore. Who's the Grand Marshal of the Possum Day Parade without Baron Corbin? But no, I didn't see the promo. Should I have seen a Baron Corbin promo? You're telling me this?
People were sending this in, and I thought they were sending it because it was so bad you had to see it. But then I started watching it. I was like, wow, this is really something. He's really committed to this. It just happens to be in the silly, stupid world of Vince McMahon's WWE on this stupid show. But I'd like to play you some of this. Feel free to jump in and...
Okay, wait, can we do this? Or this is fair use and a repertorial?
That's right. We're going to review this.
We're going to review this. All right. Well, if it's this good, then we'll have to hear it.
Okay. Well, let's go to some of this audio now. This is from SmackDown. I believe the interviewer's name is Kayla, confronting Baron Corbin sitting backstage. He's wearing a buttoned-up shirt, but it's open to mid-chest. He's grown out his hair on his sides. Of course, he's bald on top, so it's just... It looks like an old-fashioned bald guy. It's actually refreshing to see.
He doesn't look like Baron Von Raschke anymore. He looks like that game you used to have when we were kids where you took the lead shavings with the magnet and put it in various points on the bald guy's
Oh, come on. That's awful.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
And by the way, when I said last time about Danny Burch, how I'd use him on my roster, but I didn't want too many bald guys, to anyone that was wondering, I mean too many guys with the shaved heads. I'll take all the bald guys you want as long as they're old school bald. The classic bald man.
Classic bald.
Not the Steve Austin shaved head. I'm only allowing one of them on my roster. But anyway, here's Kayla Braxton with a dejected Baron Corbin. Jim, feel free to interrupt and stop this with anything you have to say, because you've been, surprisingly, this is the one feud and the one character you've kind of seen a lot over the last couple of years.
I mean, if I really need to explain it to you, I will. Look, when I was a king, my paycheck was like $20,000 a week. Every single week, that's what I got. And so you start getting these monster
Wait
paychecks.
a minute already. Hold on. He couldn't even tell the truth, because we know that even the mid-card guys now are overpaid there, but he's expecting us to believe he was making $1 million a year, and now he's been off his throne for 6 weeks, and he's in a bad way. All right, go ahead.
Again, he had the crown, but let's go back to Mr. Corbin here.
Now I can get $1 million house. Now I can get the truck I want. Now I get the car I want. Then you get the jewelry, and you start buying these things because this 20 grand is coming in every single week, and you're living large. And now at the end of the month, you have $60,000 in bills. You have taxes. You try to put a little bit in investments. And I bought into Bitcoin when it was $62,000 a share, and now it's at 30. And I borrowed some money to buy that. So
you got something to say?
Stop, wait. So now he's broke because he's an idiot and doesn't know how to handle his money. And for some reason, he thought that this 20 grand a week supposedly was going to go on forever. Did he never look in a mirror? Are there no mirrors in his home? Has he never watched one of his matches back? He should have been more shocked he got 20 grand one week than he was getting 20 grand every week. $1 million house, cars, jewelry. I bet he didn't even use our code when he ordered his magic spoon. That we're supposed to feel sorry for Bitcoin? Are we supposed to feel sorry for this financial incompetent?
And he even had to borrow money to do that, but let's go back to
that was a good line.
The sad downward spiral of Baron Corbin.
All of a sudden, all these bills catch up, and then I lose the crown, right? With the crown came that money. Now, I can't even say with pride what my weekly check is. It doesn't cover the payment on one of my vehicles. Now they've taken 3 or 4. My wife is, disappointed is the word. It's embarrassing. I have to go home to this, and I just don't have the income coming in or the luck to even try to turn it around. So when you fall hard, it's fast.
Well, we have more, but I'll stop it there.
Are they doing this tongue in cheek? He's supposed to be a heel because he's obviously a clueless putz, and his wife is on. He hasn't, he hasn't been unemployed for 6 weeks or not been the. Also, are we expecting to believe that the contract he signed with the company, they were paying him more when he was the king, but now they're not paying him nearly that much, even though he's on the same contract, because everybody's smart. There's a lot of holes in his story, ain't there, Brian?
I have to say, though, all things being equal, he's doing a good job. You're not seeing this. He is just staring straight ahead like everything has gone wrong. He's doing a good job with this material. He's actually, considering they're giving him this material,
can't polish
he's
a turd.
Doing good.
You can't polish a turd, nor can you pick one up by the clean end.
But it's his turd. I think that's the point. He's not picking up someone else's. He's picking up his own, so he doesn't.
He's taking that generic turd that was laid there by some unknown member of the writing staff, and he's taking care of it. And he's feeding it. He's watering it. He's giving it to Biddy.
No, go ahead, please.
He's giving it to Biddy. And then it's going to grow up to be the all-time record-breaking turd. It'll be at least 120 Courics.
Well, let's go back to this turd. There's some more left. Again, Kayla Braxton interviewing Baron Corbin backstage, a dejected Baron Corbin.
Well, once you hit rock bottom, the only way to go is up. So good luck, okay? Good luck.
You say rock bottom, but it just seems like things keep getting worse. What is rock bottom? Who decides what's the bottom of all this? Seriously, you go, okay, today is Friday, and I woke up in Cleveland, and I'm going, how much worse can it get? And I have breakfast, and I can't afford, a couple of eggs, and then,
Get you
I didn't have a can opener, so I just banged the can on the sidewalk until it opened, and and I had some, but I spilled it. Do you know how to get stains out of dress shirts? Because
I will actually personally help you do that. Baron, thanks for chatting with us. And
you're done. You're going to bring up all this painful stuff, and then you're just going to leave
back to the studio. So I'm going to toss it back to you guys.
I have to say, that was great. I like that. I watched it. I thought it was great.
He's got to be a lot of fun at parties.
You know what? He must be. I mean, he's clearly acting here, and he's nailing it. I mean, you have to see this. He looks like the character he's talking like. What they do with it, they'll mess it up somehow. It'll get really bad. But this is actually really good, I think. I'm more interested in SmackDown lately than I have been in a long time, just based on certain things and how good Roman and Heyman are. And then you see how good Roman and Heyman are, and of course, Baron Corbin and his backstage.
Right, now wait a minute, you had me. I'm thinking Cena's back, Reigns, Heyman, and Baron Corbin. Now maybe we can monitor SmackDown. We don't have to go through the whole thing. We'll just monitor, see what happens.
Jim, another popular topic a lot of people have sent in, and I don't think it's debuted yet, and I don't know what you know about it, but what are your thoughts if you watched a preview clip? The new show on Starz, Heels?
Well, I knew it was happening, and was it Cody was either wanting to be in that or was going to be in something, or at one point
Punk was on it, or Punk filmed scenes for it, I believe.
Punk filmed scenes for it. I saw the clip tweeted. Somebody's, hey, what do you think about this? Like you just asked. And I didn't want to watch it because I'm sorry. I'm just thinking in some way, shape, or form, this is not only going to misrepresent what the territory wrestling days were like, but also somehow make it look even fucking more low rent and or of questionable taste than it actually was. I know the premise is a family owns a Southern wrestling promotion, and the sons, one's the heel, one's the baby face, and the promotion, I guess the father dies, it's left to them, whatever, and I'm sure strife and chaos will erupt. But I'm watching a Young Rock on NBC that's got all the money that the federal government has, and I still see a fake, and from an executive producer that was actually part of the it's his life story, and they still misrepresent the wrestling business. And I don't see how they're going to show it the way it actually was instead of the way that the people now think it was then. I would be willing to be surprised or proven wrong, but
you're willing to give it a chance is what you're saying.
I'm willing to be surprised or proven wrong.
Do you have Starz? Will you watch it?
I don't fucking know if I've got Starz. We'll try to watch
Starz? What a question.
When does this come on?
Yes, I don't know.
Well, well, good then. Well, whenever it does, we'll watch it and see. But I mean, I'm afraid it's going to be, they wrestle in front of 200 people in a barn, and we got to hurry up and deliver our newspapers for our second job in the morning, and it's a struggling shoestring outlaw promotion somewhere, and not like a real regional territory was in the territory days. That's what I'm afraid of.
All right. Well, let's move on from Starz, and let's get to, maybe we'll talk about some other stars. We will find out in a moment once I
wish somebody'd hit me in my head so I could see some stars around here.
Jim, this next question was sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Mike. There's a meme going around claiming the late Andre the Giant holds the world record for alcohol consumption in one sitting at 156 beers. Do you know if this is true?
Whatever was in the Andre book by Pat LaPrade and Bertrand Hébert is true. I've heard 112. I don't know about 156. I don't know if that's the all-time world record for a human being. Does Guinness keep track of these things? You got a skinny Japanese guy eats 75 hot dogs, for fuck's sake. So you don't know some midget from Bolivia or one of those dirty Lithuanians could have the record and could have drunk Andre under the table. There's no way to verify any of this shit. Andre legitimately, yes, drank probably more alcohol consistently and most of the time without even showing any effects than almost any human on earth, but there's no way to pin these things down. By the way, all the guys that saw him drink 100 beers were all drinking beer themselves. So I've never yet seen a picture of the guy that was sober over in the fucking corner with the clipboard, marking those things off like the fucking Wade Boggs challenge, coast to coast on Always Sunny.
All right. Our next question, another popular topic here on the show, sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Denny in Birmingham, England. We've often heard your comments on Moxley being stone cold cosplay. However, Jim Ross seemingly agrees. Sort of. JR went on to say that, quote, Moxley is the closest thing in pro wrestling like Stone Cold. A lot of basement-dwelling AEW fanatics are taking that as JR saying Moxley is as good as the Texas Rattlesnake. But can you, Jim, please bring some sanity to this comment and shed some light on what JR really means? Also, do you think JR is trying to appeal to the AEW audience after the constant bashing they give him for his minor slip-ups on Dynamite and him not anointing Omega as the best ever? Do you think he's trying to make his life a little easier? I've heard him say Excalibur is the future voice of pro wrestling. This comment, along with the Moxley one, he can't really believe that, surely.
Well, I would almost agree with you, even though you are calling me Shirley, that he can't really believe that. But I'm not gonna be the amazing Kreskin and try to read Jim Ross's mind. Now, there was some wiggle room there. He's the closest thing in wrestling today to Stone Cold Steve Austin because there's absolutely nothing in wrestling today remotely close to Steve Austin. So that is a true statement, regardless of what you think about Moxley. JR and Austin are very good friends. I don't think that he would purposely malign Stone Cold. He has to be somewhat diplomatic about all these knuckleheads that he works with on a weekly basis. And who knows at this point, maybe JR's, given up on, well, they're never going to do this shit right again. So let's just try to find something positive. I don't know. I don't want to call JR a liar because he gave I don't even know if it was carefully worded or just conveniently worded compliment to somebody, but maybe Moxley is the closest thing to Stone Cold. As I said, that's still a long way away from Stone Cold. But at least they didn't hop all over him for saying, see, he's only the devil incarnate when he either slips and says something accidentally or he says something they don't agree with. As soon as he says something that they all agree with, then he's the smartest guy in the business. So,
other than the anti-authority thing, really, what are the comparisons between him and Steve Austin?
I don't have a clue.
I mean, they don't work the same. They don't look the same. Yeah, I mean, there's no other similarity other than
their matches do not unfold in the same way. They don't have the same psychology about the business. I've seen Moxley do at least a dozen things that you couldn't have fucking paid Steve Austin do with money, marbles, or chalk for good reason, because it would have been stupid to do them. So except for the anti-authority, and he likes to flip the bird, and he likes to drink beer, but since he can't really drink beer on the air because that's Paige's gimmick, otherwise than that, I'm searching for similarities.
All right, Jim. Well, let's get another question here on the show. This next one was sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from John in Rochester, New York. You guys say a lot about the Hulkster being a liar. He could be, but I can't say. As I don't the man. I think he left out the word no. As I don't the man. But I believe people that grow huge egos can have a hard time blaming themselves and fully understanding their place in the world. Him, as that example, hold on, this is great. Him, as that example, made millions of dollars. The word him is what's getting me there. Him, as that example, made millions of dollars and was famous worldwide before he ever had any real controversy that impacted his societal status and finances.
Wait a minute, he uses the word societal after the grammar of the first two sentences?
Do you really think he lies? Or embellishes his life and glorifies it based on his enormous level of worldwide fame?
No, I think he lies. Because embellishing is taking stuff that happened and making it even more interesting and potentially more entertaining to listen to, and or glossing over insignificant side road of details that you might take for the good of the overall story and the impact that it has. But just making shit up that never bore any resemblance to anything that actually happened, that's lying. So I'll go with that.
Yeah, the question, if we indeed call it that, was somewhat confusing. The name of the subject line was Hulk Hogan's ego, and it seems to be almost saying that he lied, but because he has a big ego and fame, is it really a lie or is he just exaggerating? No, that's a lie.
That's a lie.
Hogan can't tell the truth.
That's the point that I've made before, is that he already had such an incredible backlog of stories that were true to tell and accomplishments and etc. that it's insane that he has to, every time he would make a public appearance there for a while, he would come up with a different story out of whole cloth that would link him to some other famous celebrity or other landmark event or whatever, almost like he was the Forrest Gump of fucking the United States. And so that's lying, yes.
Our next question, Jim, sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Harry in Liverpool, England. With Jim once being a pretty good booker himself, as well as working for Bill Dundee, when Bill Dundee was the booker in Mid-South and Memphis, and Brian Last being a great historian on the Mid-South territory, this is all over the place, I thought I would ask you this tough question.
It's tough to read or tough to answer?
Both. Did Bill Dundee hotshot too much, primarily in Mid-South? And if so, do you think his hotshot booking in Mid-South in 84 and part of 85 was part of the reason for Mid-South's decline in attendance and gates in 1985 and beyond? And one thing I will add, the one guy I've heard say this before about Bill Dundee in Mid-South most vociferously has been Ted DiBiase, who of course wasn't there for the early part of Bill Dundee's run.
I was about to say he didn't come back till the end of 84, so about 3 to 6 months after Teddy came back on a record year, they start doing less business. I'm not knocking Ted, but no, I don't agree. Because Bill didn't hotshot anything as much as he took a new crew of talent that had been brought in, some that he recommended and some that, Watts had picked out, he didn't have any argument with, and some that he inherited. And he just energized the thing. And he did more of, because Watts was already Watts naturally went toward the Eddie Graham package show style of booking more than the Sam Muchnick St. Louis or Vince McMahon Sr. WWF, where the main event drew everything and maybe you had something strong underneath and then it was just matches. Dundee went with the same thing that Watts was already inclined to do, which was the Eddie Graham package show, where if you had 7 matches on a card, 4 or 5 of them had some type of angle or program or championship or something on the line to be interested in. And they did that successfully. If you hotshot, that means that boom, you give them everything you can, blood, violence, chaos, whatever, sacrificing story or logic or any kind of restraint. And you generally do big business, and then you lose the people because they've seen everything. Well, Dundee comes in to book in late November of 1983. They're doing record houses in the arenas in March and April, not only with the Last Stampede, but also with the Midnight and 2 and TA set a couple of records early on in that tag team program. You had Butch Reed and Dog. But then over the summer, there were more records set in more of the towns when they brought Flair in, and Kerry was hot, challenging him off of Dallas TV. But then at the end of the year, there were more records set with the Midnight and the Rock and Roll Scaffold matches. And then they go right into another good period of time toward the end of 84 and first part of 85 with that was when Doc and DiBiase teamed up, right? The Rock and Roll were still there. Or was it? No, it was Hercules and Doc at first. And then DiBiase came. Point is, if you're hot shot and you don't do big business for a year and a half, and not only go up, but then go down and then go back up again and then go down and back up again. They were cooking on a regular basis for a good period of time there. And then the combination of moving out of the Irish McNeil Boys Club and changing to the UWF and opening up an office in Dallas. Every wrestling promotion besides Vince had an office in Dallas in 1986. And the local economy, all of those things played a part. Plus, the Rock and Roll Express left. And it wasn't easy to replace them. The Midnight was gone, and it wasn't easy to replace us.
It felt like a lot of the guys that left, although there was still good stuff, I'm not saying it wasn't, there was still Mid-South, it felt like Watts reverted back to his pre-Memphis talent trade philosophies in terms of big guys.
Yeah.
Not necessarily young, fast guys with fast matches. I mean, the tag team champions went from being Rock and Roll Express to Al Perez and Wendell Cooley. It became a different territory.
Yeah, well, and also, and that's one of the reasons then Dundee left. And because, you know, his run had come to an end, and did he go back to Memphis from there and then go to work for Crockett or whatever? I'm trying to think. But the point is, all the talent changed and the booker changed, and then the economy in the core territory was taking a hit at the same time, and business went down. And Teddy had been, that's the thing, he also went back to a lot of the familiar faces. Who was there toward the end? Ted DiBiase, that had started in Mid-South in 1978, and the Freebirds, who weren't necessarily new and fresh anymore. And you mentioned a lot of big guys, the Zambui Express, you know,
Randy Colley was the North American champion as the Nightmare.
Yes. And I like Randy Colley a lot as a person and as a wrestler, but you couldn't follow Magnum TA, a Junkyard Dog, and even Terry Taylor. And then here's Randy Colley as the Nightmare. So it was a combination of things, but Dundee's booking was not hot-shotting. Dundee's booking was successful, and nobody could follow it. And Ken Mantell especially not, for fuck's sake. So, you know, and the problem is with Ted, I think, is that business went down while he was there. And that's maybe, you know, well, I should be able to follow this, but I can't follow it. He was hot-shotting. No, it was just a lot of more people were fresh and got over.
Unfortunately, despite the fact that Ted DiBiase is one of the main people think about when they think about Mid-South Wrestling, he wasn't there for its most successful period of time. That's when he was in Georgia, which was certainly not having a very successful period of time.
It was not very good. But see, the thing is, Teddy got out of that one long run, 81, 82. He told me himself he'd been there for almost 2 years. He was starting to hate the wrestling business, and his hair was falling out. He needed to leave the territory because the travel and the bumps and the style of matches never was too much for that long. Most people couldn't do that.
It tells you how tough things were. This is really rough. I'm ready to pull my hair out. I'm going to go work for Ole.
Yeah. But the longest trip in Georgia, if you didn't get on a plane back in those days, was 4 hours. So there was something to be said for it.
But here's the other thing about 86, and I know all the stories about the economy, and there's certainly a reality there. But I also just think the TV and the booking was a problem. Although you watch those shows and they're great. I mean, in the time they were great, and watching them back now, they're great and they're exciting. So many of the fans in Mid-South were very familiar with that world-class crew. And they all just came in all at once with Ken Mantell. So it wasn't like fresh talent or new talent. It was almost universally, other than like some new guys like Sting and Rick Steiner, who stood out. I mean, that's really where people started noticing them with Eddie. It was just a lot of the guys, and they did good stuff. Buddy Roberts had a comeback year, even though he looked like shit. But you had just seen these guys on world-class TV feuding with the same other people, in some cases, months before. The whole crew.
Well, and world-class TV was on in most of the Mid-South markets because they had the syndication. So it was like, we've already been watching these guys. We just couldn't see them live all the time, but now we can see them live all the time as well as on TV, and we've been watching. It wasn't new. It wasn't different. There's no simple one answer. We've touched on half a dozen things, and it was all of that. And it just didn't, they couldn't keep up that level of business. Even with the same talent that drew that level of business, you couldn't keep up that level of business.
When it comes to hot-shotting, the first example I thought of was actually Mark Lewin in Australia, but there was a reason behind that. But if I asked you to name a booker who hot-shotted, who would you name?
Oh, God. Well, everybody's done it at one point or another. It just, the ones that let it get out of hand, I mean, the Sheik was just everything, as the book will bear out by the lovely and talented Brian Solomon. Sheik was one big hotshot, and he had trained his core territory that's what wrestling was, and they stuck with it for a long period of time. But if you look at it with eyes from a wrestling fan from another territory, you're like, what the fuck is going on? This is just crazy. And too much Sheik in any of those territories was way too much. Jerry Jarrett hot-shotted with the Tupelo concession stand brawl or any number of things at one point.
But that was to bring business back.
That way, yes. Well, you never hotshot unless you're trying to bring business back. You don't even do it to begin with. I mean, I guess they do now, but nobody ever would have in those days. The only time you just hotshotted everything was when, shit, we're about to go under. Now it's just a weekly thing because the modern people think that's what it was. But there was a number of times that any territory would hotshot, hey, we got to do something, shake them up. Let's have some blood. Let's have something violent. Somebody carried out in a fucking stretcher. Let's blind Freddie Blassie, whatever the fuck, right? But it's just if you keep doing it, and especially if it doesn't work, and then you still keep doing it, and you're still at the same place, but now you've given the same number of people that were coming to see the shit you were doing before, you've given them all kinds of craziness. New people haven't come in, but now those people that you already had, that you still had left, they've seen all the blood and the violence. What else you going to fucking do? Then you're really fucked.
Well, Jim, hot-shotting a territory is one thing, but some people today hot-shot week to week on their television show, and maybe what they really need to do is have a nice, soothing cup of cocoa and go to sleep.
You know what? That is the answer probably to most people's problems, because when it comes, Brian, to recovery, performance, immunity, and feeling less stressed, sleep is everything. And now the answer has been found to better sleep in a delicious, healthy cup of cocoa. It's the Dream CBD powder from Beam, B-E-A-M. You will beam with freshness and energy the next day after sleeping on the Beam powder. It's changing the way that people sleep. With Dream Powder, you're getting more than just quality shut-eye. You're providing your body with sleepy vitamins and minerals like magnesium, reishi, I-theanine, and nano CBD. It's a guilt-free, sleep-inducing warm cup of organic cacao and organic cinnamon, all mixed up together without any added calories or sugar. And there's proof in the powder, folks. After taking Dream, 99% of people feel an improvement in the quality of their sleep. 97% of the people feel more energized the next day.
And that's it. And that's it.
1% of the people wake up the next day married to a complete stranger. but that's within the margin of error. Folks, if you want better sleep and better days delivered every month, subscribe to Dream. You get awesome perks like free delivery and 35% off your first month. Plus, you can pause or cancel at any time. Subscribe today. You'll save 35% by going to Beam, BEAMTLC.com, BeamTLC.com/JCE. BeamTLC.com/JCE. Use the code JCE at checkout, 35% off your first month, free delivery. Sleep like a baby with cacao.
All right. Well, with cacao, we're going to continue the show here. Jim, are you interested in playing some Guess the Program?
Oh, sure. We haven't done that in a while.
We have not, and we have some interesting ones here. Of course, these are all from
I know you ambushed me with this.
These are all
Haven't done any preparation.
No, you didn't even know I was going to do this, and these all come from my personal collection, so you're unaware of what I'm going to hit you with.
Completely unaware. They've been sitting in a mayonnaise jar on Funk and Wagnall's porch since noon today.
All right, Jim, here's this card, and you have to guess the town, and if possible, the year. You know what? Guess the general vicinity for this one, okay?
All right.
The opening match, Bulldozer versus Tim McNeely. The second match, Mad Dog Richard versus the Russian Mauler.
That be Richard Sharland?
The third match, Tony Roy versus Terror Rising. And the main event, Superfly Jimmy Snuka versus the Iron Horseman Perry Saturn.
Well, the obvious answer would be it's in the state of Massachusetts, but possibly because you would think that I would say that, it's actually in New Hampshire. And the year would be 1993 or 4.
It is indeed 1993. Good job, Killer Kowalski's All-Star Wrestling, presented by the Gardner International Brotherhood of Police Officers at the Municipal Skating Rink. It actually doesn't clarify if it's Massachusetts or New Hampshire.
What is the town?
Gardner.
That's not just Vince's Italian gardeners.
No, it's
what are their names? The Fraschetti brothers? I can never remember. Anyway, it's probably Massachusetts. It might be New Hampshire.
And here's a picture of a young Terror Rising, photo by Don Leibel wearing a championship belt in this program. And here's Tony Roy, but let's close this program.
And he went on to become the son-in-law of the richest promoter in the world. Donnie Leibel, that's right. He went on to... No, we love Donnie Leibel, but it was Triple H, Terror Rising.
Okay, this next card, Jim, this is a bit of a tough one, but let's see if you get it. Let's see if anything tips you off. The opening bout, Jessica Rogers and Tina Myers versus Betty Garcia and Corinne Cordero.
Oh, well, instantly I know where all right.
The semifinal, 45 minutes, 2 out of 3 falls, Dick Beyer versus Tor Yamada. And the main bout, 1 hour, 2 out of 3 falls, The Mask Red Terror versus Wild Bill Longson.
Whoa!
A little bit of a monkey wrench there, Bill Longson.
A little bit of a monkey wrench. We're in Texas. Texas, I'm going to say. And, or not, now that I think about it. We're either in Texas or in upstate New York in the late 1950s, possibly 57 or 58.
It is April 29th, 1958.
Boom!
Louisville, Kentucky.
What?
Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh my God, you cocksucker. You threw in a ringer on me. Boy, no wonder Louisville wasn't drawn in 1958. That would have been under the
Wee Willie Davis.
Yes, I was about to say the Goldenrod Athletic Club, Wee Willie Davis, because the Allen Athletic Club had folded in 1957 after the retirement of Francis McDonough, who took over from Haywood Allen, and Louisville went into a couple-of-year dark period where Wee Willie Davis was working at the sheriff's department here and was trying to be the local promoter for the Indianapolis office, and they were sending him cards like that. And then finally Barnett took over and started sending us some stars again. And they called it the Goldenrod Athletic Club because Wee Willie Davis was on the $64,000 question in the 50s because he was an expert on exotic flowers.
I have another program here in my hand, but I'm having a difficult time finding an exact year or place here.
Okay, well, then
it's a fascinating
if you can't
card.
Find it, you've got it here in front of you. Then how am I going to do that?
Well, here's the card. I mean, it's such a bootleg program. This is like a bootleg program from, I would guess, does it have anything on here? I would guess 71 or 72. It could be 73, and there's nothing here with. But it's an interesting historical piece. Here's the card: the undefeated 278-pound Crusher Derrick versus John Guzzardo, Len Guzzardo, and Don Reese in a special handicap match.
Ooh.
A one-fall midget match, 30-minute time limit.
A big midget match.
The mighty Little John from Kentucky versus Little Tojo from Japan. Wild Man Alexei from Greece versus world champion Paul Christie.
Whoa!
From Evergreen Park. And
it's Illinois.
The main event, 2 out of 3 falls, 60-minute time limit. The graduate Angelo Poffo and Dr. Thunderbolt Williams versus the White Knight and the Masked Avenger. And on the cover here is warning, the Von Brauners are coming into the Midwest, story and pictures inside. Everything is handwritten in this program. So this is almost, I mean, we could just talk about it instead of trying to guess because we don't know. It's like a pre-ICW here. Paul Christie and Angelo Poffo and Saul Weingroff running opposition.
That, as a matter of fact, they would join up with Phil Golden shortly because if they're billboarding the Von Brauners coming to the Midwest, that's sometime in the later part of 1972. Phil Golden was just starting to line those towns up from southern Illinois all the way over to West Virginia along the I-64 corridor. Angelo Poffo was going to buy into that. Paul Christie was going to become the babyface world champion for Phil Golden's All-Star Wrestling, and the Von Brauners and Saul are going to come in. Saul's going to be the booker, and he talked the Von Brauners into going in there for some semblance of a guarantee because they were mad at Jerry Jarrett and the Nashville office where the Von Brauners and Saul had been working there up until sometime in 72. So that is an early outlaw show that Angelo was running somewhere in southern Illinois, probably, before all of that took place.
Again, it goes into my overall interest in how Angelo Poffo went from being a significant player in Chicago wrestling to working nothing but outlaw shows throughout the 70s.
He always wanted to be the owner, or one of the owners. He always wanted to be the promoter because that's where you made the most money. And Angelo's, his gimmick in ICW was the miser, and that was a rib. It was an inside joke because Angelo Poffo was known as being the tightest human being that ever walked the earth. And to the point where Rip Rogers told me one time that Angelo Poffo didn't believe in washing his clothes more than once or twice a week because when you put them in the washer with the detergent, it breaks the fabric down and wears them out. You got to replace them quicker. I mean, this is somebody who would go to any lengths to, and that's why for a while they were able to compete because Angelo had the money to buy their own cameras and editing equipment and stuff in ICW. You know, they were able to be somewhat self-sufficient so that's why they were able to last so much longer than almost any other outlaw group because he was kind of very Danny Davis-ish because Danny was a tight son of a bitch when running a business. He would splurge on things for himself or, you know, charity or whatever the fuck. But he could I saw him make a $4 profit on a $102 gate one time at a show. It's just, you know, but self-sufficiency, owning everything and getting the most out of everything. That's what Angelo's deal was. And at that point, nobody was wanting to book him as a wrestler. He was in his late 40s and in the early 70s. But he felt like he could own a piece of something and establish himself as a promoter, and that's where you made the money in wrestling. Back then, at least.
Our next card, Jim. The opening match, Crusher Carlson versus the Champ. The second match, Pedro Godoy versus Bobby Starr. The third match, potential giveaway here, Kubla Khan and Jesse James versus John Caruso and Wayne Cowan. Oki Shikina versus The Avenger. Bill Bowman and Joe Turner versus Tommy Siegler and Ted Oates. Guillotine Gordon versus Dick Steinborn. Buddy Roberts and Jerry Brown, of course, the Hollywood Blondes, versus Ray Candy and Bearcat Wilkerson. Ox Baker versus El Mongol. No
Jesus
disqualification.
Christ, this show will sell out the Omni.
No disqualification, almost. And the main event, The Assassin versus Rock Hunter.
And that would be Ann Gunkel presents a card from 1970. Ooh, would it be 2 or 3? I'll say 3.
Very good. It is from the City Auditorium in Atlanta, Tuesday, January 23rd, 1973. So
Boom.
2 months after the wrestling war started.
And by the way, and I was joking about the Omni because I know that nobody was running the Omni at that point yet, but the City Auditorium was still open. But yes, that was the lovely Ann Gunkel's All South Wrestling. Joe Turner and Bill Bowman also wrestled for years at a cowboy team gimmick as Joe and Bill Sky. And Joe Turner was Dennis Condrey's brother-in-law that broke him into wrestling in the Carolinas when they needed a guy to do Roop's shoot challenge. And then Dennis got a chance to start refereeing, and Turner trained him somewhat. And then Joe Turner and Dennis went to, where was it first? I think it might have been, no, they went to Mid-South and were Mephisto and Dante under the mask. Actually, not Mid-South. It wasn't Mid-South then, but Louisiana, Leroy McGurk. They got the shit end of the territory and were Mephisto and Dante. And then they both got booked, and Dennis stayed for a while in Montgomery, Alabama in 74 before he came up to the full-time Tennessee territory. Who else was on the card? Oki Shikina.
Wayne Cowan.
Well, I'm not there yet. Oki Shikina was the guy who got stabbed in Columbus, Georgia. He's coming back from the ring, and some guy took a knife, and as Shikina's walking down the aisleway, they told me this while I was in the first time I worked this building, by the way, so it made me feel great. He's walking down the aisleway, the cops are around him, but one of the fans came out from the ringside seat and stuck a knife in his side and walked halfway around him, and then fucking took off the other way. And they honestly said, people that were there said, the cops had said, well, he's fucked. And his wife was there and begged them to call an ambulance that he could be saved, and they did, and he was. And Wayne Cowan was a rookie at that point. He'd started the year before and was wrestling under his alleged real name. It's not the way you spell his real name, but it was easier to pronounce that way. And he would not become the Dutch Mantel that we all know and love today for about another year, because he also, after he wrestled as Wayne Cowan himself, he also wrestled as Dutch Bass when he was partners with Donnie Bass, and was managed by Ma Bass briefly, and was also Chris Gallagher for his first time in the Tennessee territory when he was partners with Don Kent and managed by Sir Steve Clements. Should I go on?
You could, but I'm going to go on and ask you about a couple more programs before we wrap up this segment. This is the tough one. This is the one I guarantee you won't get. Should I ask you, or should we just move on?
Well, now it's a goddamn challenge.
It is.
So give it to me.
Aldo Bogny versus Roy McClarty.
Roy McClarty?
It's not spelled that way, which is throwing me off. Roy McClarty. The semi-main event.
Wait a minute. How's it spelled? McClarty?
Yeah, that's it.
McClarty.
McClarty, excuse me. Semi-main event Australian tag team bout. Tiny Mills and Stan Kowalski versus Thor Hagen and Frank Townsend. And the main event... the main event was the first match I read. The opening match, Joe Pazandak versus Lou Whitson.
Well, I would say Minnesota straight off the bat, except it could be you're throwing me off with some kind of Wisconsin or maybe some kind of Midwestern spot show because you said I was never going to get it. Tiny Mills and Stan Kowalski were the team of Murder Incorporated. For the Midwest, and that was before, was it before or right as the AWA was actually being formed? Wally Carbo may have had something to do with this. I'm gonna say Minnesota or the environs, and the year would have been between 1959 and 1961.
Pretty good, I think. Wednesday, January 20th, 1960, the Fargo Athletic Club, Fargo, North Dakota. This is the program for the first official event held in the new Civic Memorial Auditorium for All-Star Wrestling.
And that would be an AWA event. So for those of you not familiar with AWA geography at that point, I was right. It's some far-flung spot show out of the Minneapolis office.
That's right.
Boom!
Jim, this next one, the opening match, Bull Ramos versus Skip Young. The second event, Gene Lewis versus Jimmy Snuka. The third event, Big John Studd versus Gino Hernandez. The fourth event, Al Madrill versus Siegfried Stanky. Special event, Ox Baker versus Tommy Siegler. And a main event of Harley Race versus David Von Erich. A coin flip could determine the order of the matches.
And it usually did. Obviously, we are either in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex or the environs of the Dallas-Fort Worth booking office, somewhere in Texas or possibly southern Oklahoma. The year would have been 1970. Wait a minute. Oh, God damn it. Race and David is a world title match?
I didn't list it there, but let me actually check on that for the program here. David Von Erich tackles world champ Race, so yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say it's 77.
Very good. Will Rogers, Monday, August 15th, 1977.
Well, and it's not at Will Rogers, Texas. It's Will Rogers Coliseum, Fort Worth, Texas. Okay.
Our final one this week, the opening bout, I believe, the way it's listed here, Jesse James versus Bob Roop. Second bout, a mixed tag team match, Midget Bob Adams and Miss Sherry Lee versus Cowboy Lane and Miss Tammy Jones.
Cowboy Lang.
It says Lane. I'm reading what it says here. I know Cowboy Lang is, of course, the famous midget wrestler.
Unless Frankie Lane was 3'6".
I like the properness of this. Miss Sherry Lee and Miss Tammy Jones for a tag team title, Apollo and Lothario versus Lewis and El Lobo. For a singles championship, Mr. Saito versus Matsuda. The intermission match, this match was too late for scheduling a bonus event. I've never seen that before. The Kentuckian versus Mr. Smith.
What?
That's what, hold on.
Mr. Smith?
Who is Mr. Smith? Hold on, let me see.
Grizzly Smith was the Kentuckian.
Right.
So who would the Kentuckian fight that would be Mr. Smith?
Well, we aren't going to get any answers here.
Apparently not. El Gran Apollo and Jose Lothario would have been teaming together.
I didn't finish the card, by the way.
I thought that was it. Okay, go ahead.
No, that was just the intermission match.
Okay.
Thunderbolt Patterson, I believe, and the Missouri Mauler versus Eddie Graham and Louis Tillett. And the main event for the World's Heavyweight Championship, the champion Dory Funk Jr. versus Jack Briscoe.
Well, already we're obviously in Florida. I was going to say Florida when I heard Saito and Matsuda and Apollo and Lothario. Now the world champion Dory is defending against Briscoe.
Correct.
Okay, then we're between 69 and 73. Bob Roop was in the Florida territory. This is 70. Eddie Graham and Louis Tillett. 1971.
August 10th, 1970.
God damn it.
You're very close to
damn
it.
But
Very
and
close.
we're in Florida, and that sounds like a St. Petersburg,
Orlando.
Okay,
Orlando.
a big town. All righty.
Well, that has been the latest installment of Guess the Program, America's favorite game show. Are you clapping or getting the dirt off your hands? I can't tell.
I'm dusting my hands off now that I've pretty much knocked the shit out of all of your questioning there.
Well, you know, if someone knocks the shit out of my questioning too much, I may get offended and I may look to sue.
Well, you'd be a prick then, wouldn't you?
Especially if you weren't prepared.
Yeah,
suit.
but I'll tell you what, if somebody really fucks you around instead of Brian's made-up consternation there, and you do need to seek legal relief, then I know exactly who you need to call.
Call Stephen P. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Folks, normally in this time slot, I sing the praises of the incredible litigator and bombastic barrister that is Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. But I will not sing his praises today. I will let someone else do the singing for me. I'll let him
I
do the
like
singing around
Stephen.
here.
Oh, okay.
No, not you. David from Melbourne, Australia. Because, see, even around the world, this reach of our show and Stephen's reputation has grown exponentially. David from Melbourne, Australia wrote to me and you. He said, well, tell Brian hi. But he said, last week I heard an ad read you both did for the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, Mr. Stephen P. New. In the read, you mentioned the current class action lawsuit he's a part of against Philips for the defective CPAP machines that have been recalled. As someone who lives with sleep apnea, I was a happy consumer of a Philips CPAP device. I was completely unaware of the recall and the potential toxic issues my device could have, as I was never contacted by the retailer who sold me the device or Philips themselves. Your ad for Stephen's services alerted me to the issue, and along with my doctor, we were able to secure a new machine to ensure continued treatment for my apnea while no longer subjecting my body to potentially lethal toxins. In short, I want to thank you, as I do believe you played a part in potentially saving my health both in the short and long term. That's David from Melbourne, and we wouldn't have known about this. Stacy has had to throw away one of the machines that she was using in the past and was keeping as a backup because it was involved in this recall also. None of this would have been possible. We wouldn't have known about any of it if it hadn't been for Stephen P. New alerting us to the situation, whether it's the defective earplugs, whether it's shenanigans going on at a Veterans Administration hospital, whether it's the groundwater being poisoned, or your rights in some way being infringed upon. Our friend Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com. Did I mention 888-692-8084? If you feel you've got a case, get even with Stephen and get your tickets for August 7th, the Bash in Beckley at the Raleigh County Convention Center from All-Star Wrestling, where New Law Office and Stephen is one of the big sponsors of that event. They're going to have a wonderful time. Imagine that. That almost sounds like the nicest guy in prison or Jumbo Shrimp, a wonderful time in Beckley. But Stephen can make anything happen.
Well, Jim, let's get a few more questions before we wrap things up here this week. Our next question sent to cornydrivethru@gmail.com from Stellar Justin Lopez. Hey, Jim and Brian.
Wait a minute. What? They don't know which one?
He's the stellar one, according to
Stell
this.
or Justin Lopez? Which one, Stell Lopez or Justin Lopez?
Well, here's his question. It looks like Cross and Matt Hardy's follow-up will be delayed due to Jeff testing positive for COVID.
Well, you just said Matt. Did he write Matt?
No, I didn't say Matt. Did I say Matt?
Yes, you said Matt.
What did I say?
You said Jeff and Matt Hardy. Or you said Cross and Matt Hardy.
Oh, what I meant to say
Jeff
was...
is tested.
I'm sorry.
What did I see? I can't answer these things if you don't read them.
I'm trying here. Well, the point is that Mr. Stellar Justin Lopez, if that is indeed his real name, sent a tweet that wasn't his own, that was someone else's. Apparently a promoter announced this, not WWE, not Jeff Hardy, but a promoter of some sort put out a tweet that said, "We regret to inform you that the event with Jeff Hardy to take place Monday, July 26th, 2021 at Record Bar in Kansas City, Missouri, will have to be postponed to a later date. Jeff Hardy just tested positive for COVID this morning and will have to quarantine for the next 2 weeks and will not be participating in any live events for the next 2 weeks, refunds and all the other information there."
Yes, see, I know these things. You think I don't know things, but I know things. He was apparently going to do some type of concert at this establishment after his wrestling commitments in Kansas City. The WWE does not divulge whether people test positive for COVID or not, but the promoter of the event, not wanting people beating his doors down, going, "Where the fuck's Jeff Hardy?" popped out and did it, and that's how, and then it's been reported elsewhere. So that's what happened. But they were going to have a rematch. Now, here's the thing. We've said this before. I said this last week. I bet you, I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm just saying it's a Vince thing, that since Cross was without Scarlett and lost, that somehow Scarlett would be introduced into the equation and then he would start winning. I don't know that they would have done it this quickly, and I certainly hope that they wouldn't have beat him twice in a row with Jeff Hardy. So possibly if he's with someone else and loses without Scarlett, then that may be a key. If he's with someone else and wins, but he's still without Scarlett, then they may have scrapped that idea if they were ever going to have it. And if he just doesn't appear, then we don't really fucking know, do we?
I have a question for you I was just thinking about, just as you're talking about the way Vince would do things or would not do things. I remember in the past you talking about the statute of limitations on gimmicks or on angles. And I forget what you said it was, like every 6 years or every 10 years, whatever it was. Do you think it's
there's no hard and fast rule, but
do you think it's a longer period of time or a shorter period of time now, the statute of limitations on redoing a gimmick or doing something that was done previously, like a losing on Raw to Stars, the debut yourself gimmick?
Well, that's not necessarily a good analogy, because there's a million different ways to do. It's not just a gimmick. There's a million different ways to do something like that. When I'm talking about a statute of limitations on redoing angles or something with the same flavor of something that's been done in the past, you used to be able to redo them all the time because TV was regional and the whole world wouldn't see something at one time. That's where we've mentioned guys that work the territories would go in and get over, and then they would pitch to the booker, "Hey, I did this deal with so-and-so in Mid-South or in Georgia or in Florida. We could bring him in here, do the same thing. Here's how it goes. If the booker likes it, yeah, let's call the guy, see if he's happy where he's at, or if he can give notice, come in here. We'll see what the fuck, blah, blah, blah." And then you redo it. Now that everything's on national TV, all at the same time for good or bad, you can't redo cute little finishes or angles or things that, even if you change them up, you can't redo them as quickly because people remember them. And if it's something that's really memorable, then you don't want to do it at all anymore, because nobody else is going to take a hip toss off the top of the Hell in a Cell, or shouldn't, because Mick did that about as well as you can do it. Or, the double turn angle with Austin and Brett, that was so masterfully done. If you tried to really take off on that, as Gomer used to say, people would know. But in a lot of cases, if you tweak something, make a couple of changes, but you sort of like they started doing the Universal horror films in the 40s when they had exhausted the original source material and they decided, well, we'll take the same characters, we'll put them in a different situation. That sometimes works, but not, again, too much or too often. I remember one of the famous things that Dusty Rhodes said to me when we were in Greensboro, and this was in '88 when, I'm thinking things weren't doing as well as they'd been doing the previous couple of years. He gave us a finish for, I'm trying to think of who it might have been that we had done that with the Road Warriors recently, but now we're going to do it with the Fantastics. Same finish. And I just mentioned, Dusty, because I kept all of them written down. I said, Dusty, we did that here 2 shows ago with whoever. He said, don't worry, kid, it's 2 different people. Well, the people still notice because it'd only been 6 weeks, right, or whatever. But
that in a lot of ways sums up a lot of Dusty's, what a lot of people would say were his booking issues in later 87, early 80, or throughout 1988.
Yeah, he got to the point where he didn't realize that people were starting to catch on to some of the things being done too often, and he did them even more often. They were great things, but not... That's what I've always tried to explain to guys is you can't... Anything. They say they don't bump referees in AEW. Well, that's stupid to say we're just not going to do something. Just you're not going to overdo it. When you overdo anything, when you do anything too much, even if it was great, it becomes commonplace and or phony. And how often can the thing that couldn't happen again in a million years happen? The whole way that a fluke finish is a fluke finish and demands a rematch is if it's something that, holy shit, that couldn't happen again in a million years. What a fluke, boy. When they get back in the ring, that's not going to happen again. But if you see it happen every couple of months or weeks or whatever the time frame is, then you've lost it. It doesn't work.
Back to the Jeff Hardy situation. What do you think about the fact that WWE obviously didn't announce it? I don't think legally they can announce it. But this promoter announces it in the midst of this program on TV with Jeff Hardy, in the midst of word getting around easily on social media. What are your thoughts about the idea that word got out from someone outside the company?
Well, that really is not, I wouldn't think that's the fault of the promoter of that event unless they said, hey, don't tell anybody, but then again, it's a hard thing. I've had to be the one on the phone from the office canceling guys that had shit set up, right? I don't know if this is somebody of Jeff's own personal employee or whether it was an office representative that this was booked through or whatever, but I've had to be the guy to cancel shit. And the first thing that people want to know is, what? Why? And what am I going to fucking do to not look like a piece of shit and have people throwing rocks at me and kill my business? So they should have, if they didn't want the story to get out, they should have come up with a more different, plausible story than telling the truth, because you can't just tell, hey, don't say anything. But to a promoter, when you're talking about the reason why his attraction is not going to come, because of course he's going to say something. And then, has Jeff been vaccinated? And then is this one of the breakthrough cases? If he's not been vaccinated, why is he doing anything, anywhere involving interacting with the public? But if it's a breakthrough case, then we're hearing about more of those because of the amount of people that won't get vaccinated because they get their medical advice from Donnie Dipshit and his followers, and they don't realize that they're just growing mutant variants the longer we go without being able to kill this shit off and minimize it. So anyway, I don't know, but Jeff needs to stay away from people for 2 weeks, and maybe we'll have to wait that long to see what happens in the next chapter between him and Karrion Kross, who, if Karrion Kross loses too many more times, will actually be the definition of carrion. Dead meat laying out there to be picked over by the vultures.
Jim, our next question sent to cornydrivethru@gmail.com from Jamie in Pennsylvania. And let me just check here the email address. No, not Jamie Ward, a different Jamie.
Is that Jamie Ward?
No, a less famous Jamie from Pennsylvania. but nothing against him personally. But here's his question.
No, he's a prick, but nothing against him.
On October 14th, 1986, Magnum TA had his near-fatal car accident that ended his professional wrestling career. Starrcade 86 happened on November 27th of that year, just 44 days later. With the annual Starrcade being arguably the biggest and most important show of the year for Crockett Promotions, I had a few questions about the card. Was Magnum penciled in to face Ric Flair for the heavyweight title at Starrcade 86? If that was the case, do you think Dusty would have had Flair drop the belt to Magnum that night? Or would the title switch, if it was going to happen, wait until the program was heated up even further? If Magnum doesn't have the car accident and goes into a program with Flair, would Dusty step into the U.S. title picture and have a feud with Nikita over the championship? If it was Magnum challenging Flair for the belt, what other changes to the Starrcade lineup would have happened? And lastly, if it was not supposed to be Magnum facing Flair at Starrcade for whatever reason, possibly one last big match with Nikita that night, who would have gotten the main event for the NWA World title?
Is that all? Just 18 questions?
That's all.
Okay, first of all, I've always heard, while we didn't obviously sit down, I didn't go into Dusty's office. Hey, Dusty, now the Magnum's, hey, your best friend in the world has had this horrible wreck. How's it changing your plans? What were you going to do? But we always thought, heard, assumed, I'm pretty sure that it was a safe bet that Magnum was going to be the challenger for Flair that night for the title. I would be incredibly surprised if it changed hands the first time. Because, well, Magnum had a couple of house show matches at that point with Flair, right? Didn't they did, oh God, the Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh in the rain. Wasn't that Flair and Magnum in 85?
I'm not certain off the top of my head.
I think they went almost an hour at an outdoor show in a rainstorm. But anyway, I would have been surprised if he won the title that night simply because the money there would have been in the chase. But I think that was the idea, to start out with a Sting star-making performance with Flair, where something would happen and Magnum didn't get the belt, but it looked like he should have, because that was Dusty's style, and they could have milked that to the 87 Great American Bashes, or whenever, Dusty wanted to do it. I think what he said there, the other Jamie, is probably a good bet that it would have been Dusty and Nikita for the U.S. title, because Dusty still needed to be figured in near the top. And honestly, I got to say, when you think of it, God, Starrcade 86 with Flair and Magnum, Dusty and Nikita for the U.S. title, Midnight and Road Warriors for the scaffold, probably be stronger than what we got. Because the Flair and Nikita was anticlimactic at that point, because they had done that over the previous year numerous times, including the 85 Great American Bash in Charlotte.
Although this is the first time with the roles reversed and Flair is the heel and Nikita is the babyface.
Well, yeah, but I don't know that they would have reversed those roles with obviously with Nikita had been a heel up until, the accident with Magnum. So I'm pretty sure that probably it would have been that way had Magnum not had that accident.
So you don't think he gets the title, but you think he gets the match with Flair and something happens that leads to a series of matches, and maybe later he gets the title.
Yes, because here's look at all of these Starrcades that Dusty was responsible for. A lot of the money involved was the rematches in the buildings, in the house shows afterwards, because in those days before pay-per-view, it was closed circuit. So yes, Starrcade 86 between Atlanta and Greensboro had 30,000 people, and the closed circuit added another 30,000. But that was for the real dedicated fans. When we followed up the scaffold match in a number of the markets in January, well, some in December and some in January, after Starrcade, Philadelphia at the Civic Center sold completely out and did the all-time record Crockett Gate there, $166,000 at raised ticket prices. There was a variety of those. So, and the Flair Nikita rematches and etc. So it was almost like the post WrestleMania tour, WrestleMania Revenge tour, where they used to go and give the people live in the arenas the matches that they had seen on the big show. Dusty was booking rematches for the different towns from Starrcade into January. And that would just been the start of Flair and Magnum in the Carolinas. My God, you would have had to beat the people away with fucking clubs. It would have been a lot hotter than, even though the turn with Nikita was a surprise and it got over, and everybody was obviously dumbfounded about what happened to Magnum. But if they'd actually gone through with Magnum and Flair at that point in time on top in all of those towns, the way Magnum had been protected and as fresh as a matchup it would have been one-on-one for the title in most of those places, they would have done sellouts till the summer in the Carolina towns and the core cities.
This would have changed Starrcade. Tully Blanchard would need an opponent if Dusty was working with Nikita instead of Tully. And not that this leads into my next question, but if all of this happens, if this is the scenario and Magnum gets the match, doesn't get the title, we get this program, when do you think, if you do think, Dusty brings in Barry Windham?
Oh, because, well, I don't know that he would have. Because BW came in, what, January, February of 87, not long after Magnum's accident?
I think so. I mean, I remember him and Ron Garvin early 87, yeah.
Because Dusty knew that even though Nikita was over, it wasn't the same kind of, he wasn't filling the same spot. Dusty needed his young babyface, perennial world title contender that he could put in that spot where he could always fucking challenge for the world title, didn't necessarily have to win it. A completely different babyface from Dusty, who was the working man's hero and kind of the hero for everybody. He needed that young. He had Nikita was a great character babyface, gimmick babyface. You wouldn't think that the Russian Nightmare should be a babyface. That's what made him a great gimmick babyface. But you need the young guy. And so the reason why that he called, because that was supposed to be Barry's spot to begin with. And Barry left and went to Vince shortly after Dusty started in Carolina's booking. So that's when he got Magnum from Mid-South, who he'd known since Florida in 83, Terry Allen. He gives Magnum that push. If Magnum was still there, he wouldn't have called Barry back.
You think Steamboat leaves if Magnum... I'm trying to remember the timeline. Magnum came in before Steamboat left. No, wait. No, he didn't, now that I think about it. No. But also Steamboat wasn't... Dusty wouldn't have considered Steamboat the young guy to fill that spot because Steamboat had been in the Carolinas for, 84? He'd been there for 7 years. I can't see a scenario where Dusty knows... I shouldn't say no, where Dusty books Steamboat well.
It wasn't that he didn't respect Steamboat's ability, but he wasn't one of Dusty's guys that Dusty brought in, and Dusty hadn't been there to see Steamboat's history in the Carolinas, and it wasn't his sports car, so he wasn't going to drive it all the time. That doesn't mean that it couldn't run. But anyway, that's the thing. You can never tell for sure what would have happened if so-and-so hadn't left and gone somewhere else, or if so-and-so hadn't got hurt and couldn't fill that spot or whatever. But that was the whole deal. The reason why Magnum had been there for the previous year and a half was to be built up as the future babyface NWA champion so that Dusty could move into the Babe Ruth role. And Barry, the matches between Windham and Flair were 5 times as good as the matches that would have been between Flair and Magnum, because Barry was at that year probably one of the best, if not the best in the business. But they didn't draw what Magnum and Flair would have drawn because they didn't have the year and a half build that had been suddenly yanked out from under the thing. So Magnum and Flair would have been probably the biggest money single program of 1987 if they'd have had it.
Jim, our next question sent to cornydrivethru@gmail.com from Austin Williams. Hey, Jim, big fan of the show. I would like to know your thoughts on Kurt Angle.
Okay, well, it's a refreshing, a more short question rather than the 18 subparts of the previous one. I always loved Kurt Angle. I got along great with him. He's a tremendous talent. What a fucking not a tough guy in terms of like the like Haku tough guy. I mean, he's obviously an Olympic gold medalist, but I mean just physically tough. Could put himself through anything and had the will to go on. I remember because we worked close together a lot in TNA for 3 years, and he'd come back from some of those matches in the Impact Zone, and he'd be back in one of those training rooms with ice bags taped to every part of his body, shoulders, knees, back, neck. But he just had a match where you thought there was nothing wrong with him, and he was, in better shape than anybody on the planet. He picked up very quickly the mechanics of working. He was, a very fast learner, and that can't even be attributed to just being a great athlete. There's been a lot of great athletes. Tom McGee was technically a great athlete, couldn't fucking stick his thumb in his ass. But Kurt picked up the mechanics real quick. I worked with him when he'd only been wrestling like 3 months when they sent him down to Memphis early before we had OVW in the developmental program, and Randy Hales booked him as a babyface. I was managing Steve Bradley. That was the fall of '99. And I mean, he still had hair, Kurt. He was green as far as why is all this happening, but he was having as good a physical match performing the actual moves as guys that have been in the business for several years. So he picked that part up quick, and then immediately going up there and working with all the top guys in the business, he got the mental aspect of it and how to have a Kurt Angle match. That was, again, he was very good at doing shit that Kurt Angle should do and not necessarily doing shit that Kurt Angle shouldn't do. And I'm not saying the stuff that risked his health and safety. I'm just saying stuff that it didn't make any sense for Kurt Angle, this Olympic champion and, shooter, to do. I think he stayed away from thumbtacks as far as I remember. But anyway, he's a nice guy, or I always got along with him and had no issues whatsoever. And he was easy to work with when you were agenting his matches. He didn't just come there to fucking, make a check or take, the Mark's money, Dixie's money. He was there to apply himself and get fucking over and do the best he could for the company. I wish we'd have had a bunch more like that.
Our next question, Jim, sent on Twitter using the hashtag #CornyDriveThru from Bruiser Schmidt. While listening to the experience this week, I had a random thought pop into my head.
And it died of loneliness.
Do pro wrestlers make better fighters in a shoot because of the way their brains have been trained over the years to watch body language for strikes or moves being telegraphed? So do wrestlers have an advantage in a real fight because of their training?
Wrestlers have an advantage in a real fight if they've trained to be legitimate wrestlers. Or just because they're in good shape and they used to be bigger than the average person and they probably got a higher pain threshold. I don't know that watching body language might necessarily have that much to do with it when you're used to watching body language of a guy that's trying to feed you something, right? It's kind of opposite body language. Either the guy's opening himself up on purpose and kind of giving you the Iggy, or he's feeding you his arm when he's begging and asking you to shoot him or whatever. It's different body language. So I don't necessarily know if that would come into. I know that goddamn, who was it? Fuck. We got a hoot in Mid-South. One of the guys got in a fucking beef as he was getting out of the ring with one of the fans, and he forgot and threw working punches 2 or 3 times and then realized what he was fucking doing. It wasn't like a Butch Reed or somebody like that. It was one of the middle card guys. I can't remember who it was now. But anyway, point is, every once in a while, yeah, the training actually works against you when it's like you shit. I just threw a fucking working punch. What am I doing? I've heard that happen a time or two. I don't know if the body language thing helps in a real fight. I think it just comes down to who you're trying to fucking pick a fight with.
Jim, our next question sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Will in Southern Illinois. Hypothetical, if there had been a major personal
Or
rift,
even hypothetically.
well, he just wrote hypothetical with a semicolon. If there had been a major personal rift between Hogan and Vince in the mid-'80s, say mid-1986 after WrestleMania 2, which led to Hogan leaving the WWF for the NWA, what would be the more likely outcome? Option 1. Hogan and the NWA turn the tide and win the promotional war of the 1980s, and WWF fades from its position of power and prominence. Or B. Vince uses his already substantial national platform to get someone else over in the top spot, and the WWF still wins the war, despite short-term setbacks.
Well, can we go for option 3? Hogan goes crazy because Dusty's booking him, and Dusty won't book him like Hulk Hogan. Dusty gets frazzled with Hogan because he is not used to hearing "that doesn't work for me, brother." Flair's willing to do whatever, but the fans, especially in the Carolina base territory, boo Hogan out of the building and refuse to take him as a babyface because he symbolizes everything that they already didn't like about WWF wrestling.
Well, let me stop you right there. Does Hulk Hogan already generate that kind of reaction in 1986? He was not yet as hammy and as cartoony as he would be. He was still relatively fresh on the national stage. Does he already at that point in 86 get that kind of reaction from the Crockett fans?
I think in some cases, yes, because, I mean, look at what was going on and I'm not talking about in Philadelphia and Baltimore. It would have made a huge difference. Anywhere else that Crockett expanded, but in the core Carolina territory, which was still the majority of the business at that point in time, Greensboro doing $100,000 gates, Charlotte doing $100,000 gates. How would you have done that? Hogan had to be a babyface. But if he came in and worked with Flair as the champion and Flair was the heel, the people would have still cheered for Flair because they would have seen Hogan as the outsider. And you know how those people were about Flair. Dusty talked to them and appealed to them on that visceral NWA level, and not to say your prayers, take your vitamins. Hogan would have had to change his whole fucking thing, which may then have changed what made him Hulk Hogan.
But do you think like 1983 Hogan would have gotten over in Mid-Atlantic, wouldn't he have? In the AWA? Like if you take that Hogan and just drop him in Mid-Atlantic?
I think, well, but then he's being booked by Dusty. And then you've got Flair was a special case that Dusty could coexist at the top with, right?
For a while.
Now you've got Hogan in that mix, and Hogan knows the way that he stays over is to be dominant and invulnerable, and that's why Vince was his perfect promoter and the perfect way to book Hogan, the perfect way to push him. But then does he come in as a babyface? Does he dismantle Ric Flair when Dusty's been trying and failed? Do you immediately put the belt on him over Flair and risk the blowback from the Carolinas fans? Or do you bring him in as the gimmick attraction and Dusty and Flair are still fighting over the belt? Or you can't make him a heel. That means, does Dusty become partners with Hulk Hogan? How does Hulk Hogan feel about that? Or in one of the group of the superpowers, instead of Dusty and Magnum and the Road Warriors, it's Dusty and the Road Warriors and Hulk Hogan. Dusty had a different booking philosophy. It was more traditional, old school, and to keep himself and his main antagonist above the rest of the fray for the most part, except when rock and roll got hot, Road Warriors got hot, then you had six-mans with Dusty and them against Flair and the Horsemen. Hogan needed to be concentrated on. I'm not, it just, those three guys with Dusty booking in the Carolinas of 1986 or the NWA of 1986, it wouldn't have worked out like it did for everybody more beneficially. And then would Dusty then have either left and gone to work for Vince, or would Flair have left and gone to work for Vince?
And Hogan needs the belt. You couldn't have Hogan chase the belt at that point.
Yeah, see, that's what they're just, it's not even sometimes about the talent, it's about the lay of the land. Not only what the fans are used to, but who's involved in the office and who's on the roster. And so you cannot have three ultimate fucking heroes.
Well, the other thing, too, is if Dusty had him, again, this is all hypothetical, he would be able to get him in and out a lot, because I'm guessing Hogan would have gone back to his New Japan deal if he had left the WWF.
Well, maybe not, because maybe he wanted to. Maybe Crockett said, "Well, we're going to have you fucking exclusively, since we're just pulling all this out of our ass." I don't.
Do you see any way that Crockett? Let's say this comes up in '87. Is there any way Crockett could have done, although it's a different relationship and he owns his own company, could have done kind of what Bischoff did and gone to Ted Turner and said, "Hey, we have a chance to get Hogan. Is there any way you could put some money in? It'll mean ratings for your network to help us get Hogan." Do you think there's any way that the relationship was there already?
Yeah, for something like that, yeah, he could have gone and said that easily. I would think. Maybe he might not have got Ted on the phone first try, but he could have run it up the fucking chain of command. Because then you would, okay, Hulk Hogan, his new home on national television is now on TBS Superstation. They would have got into that. But then, like I said, what do you do with everybody? Sometimes all those major players can't coexist. What about if you tried to put Mick Jagger and Robert Plant in either the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin? Would it work? Even if you're adding major star power, sometimes when you mess up the chemical equation of shit that worked and was working, you fuck it up. I think Hogan, if he'd have left the WWF, had been the stupidest thing he ever did in 1986. And I don't know whether he would have worked to near that level in the NWA, even if he had been pushed, because it was different surroundings in a different place. And the NWA of 1986 was a lot different than WCW of 1996. There, Hogan fit in.
If you get Hogan, who do you program him with? Do you go right to Flair, or do you go to Nikita?
Well, that's another thing. Nikita Koloff was built up as a ruthless Russian nightmare and a monster. So yes, Hogan could drop the leg on him in 7 minutes, and that would sure get Hogan over. But then it made everybody else that had either been beaten by Nikita, or it took them 20, 30 minutes, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, whatever, to beat Nikita. With you're blending styles and colors and chemicals that didn't necessarily go together. There have been multiple cases over the years of a guy drawing incredible record-setting money in one place and bombing in another place because of a different makeup of not only the company and the style of wrestling they promoted, but the fan base. So I'm not saying Hogan in 1986 would have been big anywhere, but it would have not worked out to everybody's satisfaction like it did the way it happened if they'd started moving around. And Vince would have put somebody else in that spot, and it would have been Hulk Hogan. So he would have suffered also. Crockett may have got a short-term boost, but then at what price to his in-ring style, which would have had to been changed around quite a bit to cater to Hogan, which is why that Hogan was perfect for, and he brought all the people in that he could work with and that he'd like to work with up there. And then do the fans react negatively to the entire style of the promotion changing for Hogan, because that was the reason why they were watching the NWA to begin with because it wasn't the WWF, because that was the showbiz stuff. We've heard that testimony from every fucking fan that ever went to any of those matches. The NWA people went because they thought that it was kind of the real stuff or the realer stuff or the more adult stuff. And the WWF fans liked the gimmicks and the characters and the showbiz.
All right, Jim, I have an off-topic question for you here. This one sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Kyle in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Clarksville Kyle, eh?
Love the show. While not wrestling related, this seems to be one of the bigger stories going around at the moment. I would like to ask Jim his thoughts on Britney Spears' fight to get out of her conservatorship. Excuse me. I appreciate the time.
Oh my God. I saw some piece on the news that her father won't let her take her IUD out. And she's 40 years old or whatever. I'm wondering how she gets to use the IUD if they're keeping that close of a tab on her. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yes, she had a mental meltdown, 15 years ago or whatever, and shaved her head and did a bunch of strange shit. But now,
we've all done that. We've all done that.
Well,
no, I guess not.
But isn't it obvious at this point that this fucking father of hers is the classic stage mother and is trying to protect his golden goose because they're pretty much, trailer park denizens of Louisiana, and he knows this is his meal ticket. I think that the fucking poor girl ought to be able to do whatever she wants to do, especially with all the money that she's earned. And if they do have to have somebody responsible keep an eye on her, it ought to be somebody appointed by the court as a neutral party with no family ties or claim on any of the fucking money. That's just insane. So yeah, free Britney, man.
Where is she from in Louisiana? Is it from a big town? Is it from like Baton Rouge or something?
I saw some program on her, and doesn't she have a smaller sister? Maybe, yeah, she's only 2'4". No, a younger sister.
Yes, she does, yes.
And they're from somewhere in Louisiana, and this was, elsewise they were going to be working at fucking Hardee's at the checkout, unless the fact that she can sing and dance and all that stuff.
All right, our next question, Jim, sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from My Theresa.
What?
My Theresa.
Wait, you mean the Knacks? My Theresa? Boom, 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 boom. My Theresa.
I would think it would be My Teresa, but considering it's one word and Teresa is spelled T-H-A, I guess it's My Theresa.
Oh, my little.
Oh, well, I'm wrong. Excuse me. Good evening.
When you gonna give me some time, Theresa? Ooh, you make my motor run.
I can't listen to that song anymore. That song is so dirty.
It's filthy.
It's filthy.
It's filthy. That's why we like it.
Well, here's something away from, I believe it was Doug Feiger, the lead singer of the band. I represent the company My Theresa. Our company is interested in working with you as a partner who promotes the company's brand. The My Theresa online shop was founded in 2006 by, I don't know who this person is, and is associated with the multi-brand store in Munich. Our selection consists of high-end clothing, shoes, bags, and from designer brands such as Bottega Veneta, Burberry, Fendi, Gucci, and others.
Wait a minute, is that a chant like Solo Camerato a go-go? Is it Burberry?
Fendi.
Whatever you said.
Gucci.
Fendi. Oh, a Fendi.
In January 2019, My Theresa launched a kids wear category. January 2020 saw the launch of My Theresa Men. What fee do you usually charge for promotion to pre-roll?
Apparently
we are interested
nothing.
To cooperate with you.
It. Have these people paid for this plug?
And by the way, it's signed My Theresa Company.
My Theresa.
All right, and there's the garbage email segment of the show.
Such a dirty one, I'm getting on for the time. I'm a younger guy. My. Woo!
You see, you can't even sing those lyrics out loud and not feel like awkward.
I don't know what the lyrics are.
Hold on, let me get the lyrics of My Sharona. And once I heard the lyrics, I was like, that song's not so catchy anymore. Ooh, my little pretty one, when are you going to give me some time, Sharona?
Uh-huh.
Ooh, you make my motor run. Gun it, coming off the line, Sharona. Never gonna stop, give it up, such a dirty mind. Always get it up for the touch of the younger kind.
Ooh!
My. I mean, where was this written? In the Memphis territory?
Hey!
But
Could have been Mississippi, way down there. You know, first time I went to Mississippi, I walked up, a guy introduced me to his wife and his sister. Problem was there was only one woman standing there. Hey! Actually, in some southern states, when a guy and a woman, when they get a divorce, they can still be brother and sister. They don't have to break up there.
That's good to know. Well, let's, before we break up, get at least one more question. We'll see how this goes. Maybe we won't end on this one, but let's get this question. This is sent to cornydrivethrue@gmail.com.
You're already backing up.
From Edward Johnson. Recently, former NWA, TNA, Impact Wrestling announcer Don West came out and revealed he has brain cancer. I was wondering if Jim could share any Don West stories and explain his other roles beyond announcing duties.
Oh, God, I love Don West, and we want to say get well soon, Don, from everybody here at the show and all of the listeners. Don West is a fucking hilarious guy, great guy, friendly, fun to talk to, works his ass off. They got him. I mean, everybody knows he was on the Home Shopping Network. He'd never done wrestling, but he was based in Nashville at that point, and Jeff had seen him and thought he'd be great and broke him in, and he buckled down at first. He made up for everything that he didn't know with enthusiasm. But then he buckled down and got to know the guys, and he worked his ass off with it. And he took some abuse sometimes from the fans, but the only thing that I enjoyed about my time in TNA was getting to hang out with Dutch Mantell and sitting after the production meetings in the production room with the air conditioning there at Universal and talking to Don West and Mike Tenay just about wrestling or what's going on in the news or just bullshit or just telling jokes or whatever. But Don, you know, he wasn't, as I said, he wasn't the typical wrestling announcer, but, you know, he was a nice guy and he wanted to do well. So he worked well with Mike and he was always anxious to take direction and didn't have a attitude about it and wasn't made to sound like a Michael Cole clone. So, but anyway, but I like Don. A specific story off the top of my head, I'll tell you one. The first time that Don West ever met me, I didn't meet Don West. And he was scared to death to speak to me when we first did meet, when I went to Orlando for the first time and started working at TNA, because he was there in Nashville at Burt Prentice's show when I spit in Ed Ferrara's face. And think about this. Don West doesn't know anything about the wrestling business. He's never been involved in it before, but he's asked to be the host of a new television program, or the pay-per-views they were doing to begin with on broadcast. And so I've told the story, but Burt Prentice had me booked with Scott Hudson from Georgia to do commentary on one of his shows in Nashville. Well, they had suggested that Don get some practice calling wrestling, and the announce team was going to be Mike Tenay, Don West, and Ed Ferrara. And so the TNA folks, Jeff and Jared Jarrett, they said, well, go over to Burt Prentice's show and we can sit up in the bleachers and you can put some commentary down and practice working with each other. So I don't know any of this until Burt Prentice calls me, and all he says, hey, the TNA announcers are going to be coming to my show. And I thought he was trying to let me down easy like they want them to do. I'm like, well, okay, Burt, I'll step back. I'm doing OVW at the time. No big. No. I want you to do my show. They're going to be practicing in the bleachers, but one of them is going to be Ed Ferrara. That's what I said. Oh, I got to fucking punch him in the face. And that's what Burt said. No, please, promise me you won't hit him. Okay. So the point is, I go there thinking I'm going to avoid this fucking guy, and I promised Burt Prentice I'm not going to punch Ed Ferrara. I didn't imagine that Ed Ferrara was such a brainless nitwit that he was going to walk up to me, dreadlocks and all, 3-foot-long dreadlocks on his fat pudgy white boy frame, he's going to walk up to me and try to shake my hand. What I also didn't know until Don told me later on, which was the point of this story, was Don West was right behind him. He doesn't know anything about wrestling. He's coming in this new place, his first time to meet this guy's going to be doing the broadcast with him, and they're going to be at a wrestling show. And his broadcast partner walks up to Jim Cornette, who he said he knew who I was. And I immediately scream at him, tell him he's a piece of shit. Fuck him. Don't walk up to me, you cocksucker, the way you treated Jim Ross, and then dare him to fight and spit in his fucking face. And then we were separated, and then I went on and did the commentary, and I never saw Ed Ferrara again. He ended up leaving early, and I never met Don West at all that night. And the first time I went to Orlando, actually, it wasn't even the first time. It might have been 4 or 5 times later. Don finally said, you know, I was scared the fuck to meet you when I heard you were coming here. And then he told me he was there the first time, and I started laughing. He said, but come to find out, you're a great guy. Like, he was so surprised. I said, well, thank you, Don. I appreciate that. But even though we got off on a rocky start, it wasn't anything he did. But yes, I hope Don feels better quick. I really enjoy him, and I think he's a great guy. And you know, I can't say anything else. I don't have a bad thing in the world to say about Don West.
Well, with that, we wrap up another episode of The Drive-Thru. Hold on, I have a new instrument here. Let me see if this thing works. Because this thing is a bizarre thing. All right.
Oh, good Lord.
Well, with that, The Drive-Thru is closed. Of course, you can hear the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts each and every Saturday. Wherever you find your favorite shows. Let me put this weird thing down.
Wait a minute. What?
Hey. You can get access to classic episodes of The Drive-Thru and The Experience going back to the very beginning in 2013 by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Cornette. Become a patron today for only $5 a month and get access to the archive. Patreon.com/Cornette. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Super Podcast at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel, approaching 230,000 subscribers, growing each and every day. Subscribe and check out the clips of the episodes, the full episodes, the omnibus collections,
Check out the full episodes, then the clips of the episodes, and then go back to listen to the full episode again to make sure you understood the clips.
All with the amazing Travis Heckle artwork, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. There have been promises made. Something will happen soon.
And there will be promiseth kept, baby. Promiseth made and promiseth kept. Labor Day weekend. I'm going to go into labor and give birth to a fantastifying new website.
At JimCornette.com. The Law Office, the Drive-Thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New.
Or the Law Office of Stephen P. New is brought to you by the Drive-Thru.
888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until Saturday on The Experience and next week, right back here on The Drive-Thru. For Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!